All right.
Sure.
All right. People can see and hear us now.
I see Loco's got one of the most flawed branding shirts of all time.
What? Dude,
By the way, this is how a baller I am.
What?
First and foremost, Loco, you'll never be on this level, mate. Right? When I go to stuff like the Esports Awards,
yeah,
people like Hex and Nadeshot come to me, mate, and pay homage. I don't go to these fuckers. I don't give a fuck about little pleb COD games. Like, it's a shit version of Counter-Strike. And when they came to me, right?
Yeah.
I'll give you a little piece of insight. Yeah. You know what? Your boy Nadeshot actually said to me.
What?
He said, give me the honest truth. What do you think I need to change about 100 Thieves, right?
Yeah.
And he even said 100 Thieves.
Yeah.
And I said, funny you should ask, Nadeshot. Everyone always tells me you're a fucking genius at marketing. But you just said 100 Thieves. That's not even the name of your team. Your team's called 100 Thieves. And I said, are you aware of how the English language and grammar work? There's no such thing as 100 thieves unless you don't know the language. There's only 100 thieves or 100 thieves. And what do you have as your tag? The number 100, you fucking imbecile. A number you could never say if you actually want people to say the name of your brand. I bet everyone who's a fan goes to fucking Google and they type in 100 thieves. It's like, it finds it because there's obviously nothing else, but worst branding ever. So all I'm going to say is I don't think he was going to take my advice to completely format the entire brand of his company, but if he was actually a baller, he would. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, Jackson, thank you so much for the t-shirt. I rep it proudly.
It's alright.
Do you see
Did he get it from Nadeshot himself? Just some
Do you see
fucking low-level pleb in the company? Fair enough, then.
Jackson's, what is it? He's one of the first employees. He's biffed up. Anyways, do you see the orange here matching with the orange here and the black matching with the black
Wow,
here?
you learned to...
I do see... Wait a second.
Coordinate.
Stand up again.
Okay.
Stand up again. I do see that you have legally been required by the state of California to write no on your trousers, just so that, like, you know, there's no sort of a consent scenario that gets brought up at any point in time, you know. Whatever. I should do fucking stand-up comedy. Anyway, I don't need material. Are we ready to go?
All you need is Loco on the stage.
I do actually,
kind of to the side, yeah.
The real problem is on my own. I can generate. Like, if Loco could just stand there and just give his thoughts, I could go all day.
Don't lie. You love working with me.
I never said there's anything wrong with it, mate. Yeah. I have a good time with these shows. If you haven't noticed, I sort of do whatever the fuck I want.
Yeah.
So. Pretty good, right? Let me think.
Yeah, let me go put the tweet up.
95 was the episode this time.
Yeah, 95 should be this one.
So close to 100, guys.
Yeah. Esther, you really
Especially because I think that's actually... I'm not actually sure when... I'll actually double check. When was the first episode of Listen Local? The actual real first.
We are live.
The real first one was on November. So I was going to say like within 1 year, but that's actually not true. I wonder how many episodes before it started in this year. Okay, we did a lot in the off-season.
Yeah.
Still done 80 episodes this year. It's not bad. Where's this? Right, there you go. That doesn't even look like the same person on this fucking... They must... At the LCS, do they even put makeup on the fucking coaches?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Right,
So
that makes sense, because with that lighting, because I always tell people, like, everyone at Esports is uglier than they look. Like, you have to understand, they do a fucking amazing job, not only with the makeup, but the lighting just makes everyone look sick. We're all wearing suits and stuff. Like, none of us look that good in real life.
Riot does a stellar job making me look, like a 5 out of 10 instead of a 2 out of 10. So, yeah, congrats to them.
Like, I'll even tell you a little piece of random trivia, Loco. What's pathetic is, right, I think this year I was probably at the fattest I've ever been. But the thing is, I've got, like, the sort of frame where it doesn't look that
you were
bad,
rocking the dad bod.
But what's hilarious is, right, so at that point in time, you should think I should be at my least attractive, right? Because I've just got that fucking, I don't know, straight fire charisma. I could just show you some DMs, mate, how many fucking, like, Instagram DMs I've had from like hot fucking gamer models that I just follow, that just all they ever say is just like cringe shit like, daddy, post more pictures, daddy. It's like, fuck.
What?
Give me a break. Just give me a break.
What?
Stop sexually objectifying me, for fuck's sake.
You're trolling.
Leave a motherfucker to just be. Maybe I'm just confident in my body. My body is not for you women. just because you're models, just because you've got that ass out, I'm just trying to fucking enjoy my life. Oh, no, not that many. I'm not lying. I'm not saying it was like 50 people.
Is that why like you were dressing up a lot in older videos with like the jacket and the scarf?
Exactly.
Because you wanted to hide
I was very prudish back then. I wasn't as comfortable with my sexuality, but now I've realised I'm a sexual creature. Hear me roar.
Dude, I do get DMs from e-girls, but a lot of times they're extremely young, so I never want to reply back, and it's like some cringy ass shit. It's like
By the way, when Loco says extremely young, I'm about to save his career here. He just means like 16. He doesn't mean like
well, I meant 18, 19, but
but when he said extremely, like, don't use the word extremely in that context.
Wait, to me, a 27-year-old 18, 19-year-old is extremely young. It's like
I know that.
Yeah,
I know that. But you also said girls.
Yeah.
So for the love of God,
I'm
just making sure it's all on the measure. It's all cool. It's all okay. We're all walking.
Oh my
like
God.
Windows restore. We're gonna restore to the previous point and continue on like none of it ever happened. So
wait, can I tell the cringy shit they've say though? Like, they're like, oh man, you know, you have a really big Adam's apple. Like, what's it like having a really big Adam's apple? And I'm like, what the fuck is this like flirting? I'm like, holy fucking shit. I hope I wasn't this bad at flirting when I was 18, 19.
Please start the show. I cannot deal with Loco's sex appeal any longer or attempt at it. So
the only reason I told you that story though is because the sad thing is, like I say, like listen, mate, I'd have like 10 years ago for all the girls to be going ham like that. I don't really want it fucking now. It's like it's just over, isn't it? Like that's moved past that now, mate. Where's the fucking...
There's just nothing good about. There's nothing good to gain from talking to an 18-year-old. I was talking.
Not in esports as well, mate. Like, come on, that's just a fucking. That's just a recipe for disaster waiting to happen, innit? Like, just use your brain.
I do talk to girls at like mutual parties, and one of the first things I'll ask is like their age, and then when they say they're 18, I will literally be like, "Thank you so much for the conversation," and leave. There's just nothing good to come out of this.
Wait there a second.
Unless they're a boss-ass Fortnite player.
What I do is I just say like, "Oh, have you ever met Broken Blade or Arcadian?" And then I just introduce them, and then just see how it goes. I'm thinking of doing it to Cloud9 next year. Fuck with me, you know. I mean, if the girls are cool enough, you know.
Okay.
That's actually a thing, by the way. As we were just about to start, I even thought about, because people never think of this, right? Remember, we're getting to the point now where players are worth millions. Where like, if like for example, if Huni just got ill, in a key playoff series, you probably just lose the series if you paid for Huni because he's one of the best players, right? Like. What people don't realize is, you know, in professional sports, like people really do like sabotage food and stuff in hotel rooms, do crazy shit like that. So what I don't get is this: esports is the easiest. Like we've all been looking at it the wrong way around. Put this in the episode, by the way. We've all been looking at this the wrong way around. Editor, put this in. What the problem is this: we're all complaining that you can't keep the fucking LCS pros away from the girls, and if the wrong girl gets in with the right guy, it ruins the whole team. Breaks it up. The problem is this. You guys are trying to do the impossible. You're trying to make all the guys stay on the level, right? What you need to do is go on the offensive. Why don't you just convince some girls to go and hook up with the other team? Get the wrong girl with the right guy. You can fuck up fucking Echo. Well, they're not even a team anymore. I guess someone already fucked up Echo Fox. It wasn't actually a girl, believe it or not. You could get all these teams, and then I guess the problem is it looked conspicuous that like my team would be the ones dressed as like Catholic monks or something, you know, like.
I used to have a no girls in the house rule on TSM.
I definitely think it can be more like we've seen with people having wives and long-term relationships more. It's more about like the player having the personal responsibility and maturity to actually like be in those relationships and be emotionally intelligent about it in the first place. So.
Which is half the problem, like what you just said there at the end. I think, to be fair, they're quite young. Right, anyway, let's start the episode. Right, this is going to be episode 95 of Listen Loco. We did 94 yesterday, which was the EU/LEC episode with the off-season and all that. So we'll do it the same way. So since Invert wasn't here, who was the coach of FlyQuest, still a team in the LCS, actually, just for people who don't know. Obviously, a lot of brands came and went. Right, what we'll do is we'll start by just asking him a bit about FlyQuest. Then we'll jump into all the off-season stuff. And for the off-season stuff, we'll do it the same again. Like, I know people did like that master document on Reddit or whatever the fucking Travis had one, but like I myself don't know some of the moves. There's probably some I missed in the news. So I like to react to some of them live myself. So if we start off with the whole FlyQuest angle, right? People might remember that in the spring of this year, I know it's going to be confusing because we're talking about last season, but this year. So I'm just going to use this year. In the spring of this year, FlyQuest actually looked like one of the teams that from the outside must have absolutely met or exceeded expectations. Like you had a bunch of players where none of them were going to be considered MVP level players, but all of a sudden you were in the semi-finals. You actually had a pretty, I would say, like a fairly good squad in terms of performance against most of the bottom parts of the league. Sure, not many people were going to beat the Team Liquids and TSMs at the time. And then the problem is, going into the summer, because your team started so well, while so many teams were train wrecks like Golden Guardians had to get it together later, people thought maybe FlyQuest can even build on this. And, you know, a lot of the rosters I personally thought got a bit fucked up in the summer, so maybe they can do even better. Maybe they can actually become challenged for the 3rd spot. Maybe they can go to Worlds. Now, obviously in the summer, it pretty much went to shit and none of that happened. So give us your perspective on the year in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. So Spring Split was incredible, like you said, like being able to get to playoffs, beat Golden Guardians, and have enough points actually to qualify for the gauntlet through that, and be able to at least attempt to go to Worlds. That was really good. Doing it with rookies as well, so being able to play with JJ and Viper and build them up was really good. The summer had a lot of infrastructural issues as well as like how we performed, obviously. So on stage, I think, you know, some of our meta reads were pretty terrible, but also infrastructure wise, I think for the vast majority of the split, we were actually playing on 40 to 60 ping on the tournament realm, which is normally supposed to be 8 ping for people in LA. And a lot of teams had those. A lot of teams had those internet issues, and some of them actually fixed them quite quickly. And we weren't as proactive with it, so
let me just check. So was it the internet connection in the house or on the actual tournament realm itself? Which was it that was the issue?
So it was the ISP. So they were rerouting it through Texas or something before getting to the tournament realm server. So we're going from LA to Texas and back, and so that kind of fucked with everything. And it got to the point where our best weeks of practice were actually when we kind of bombarded Riot with requests to play at the LCS studio during our gauntlet prep. So we pretty much just left the house, like left that environment completely, which was also generating a bit of a toxic environment because, you know, you're working where you play, and then, you know, you have all these issues when you're playing, and that's affecting a lot of things. And we actually had our best weeks of practice in summer at Riot Studios preparing for the gauntlet, and teams were actually like pretty, like our results were good in scrims, and teams were kind of a little afraid of us actually, which is a little weird. Like we're in the last couple of weeks we were beating TSM CLG, and we didn't really get to play clutch because we played them in the first round, but just that infrastructure change alone helped our practice a lot. But our practice in summer was just so bad, it actually like reduced that foundation we had from spring instead of building upon it. So
like being as during the last season this year, I remember I think it was at the beginning of the summer split, wasn't Travis did that video where he essentially revealed how much each of the teams had spent on the like payroll of the teams, but actually in quite an interesting creative way, where instead of just saying the flat number, and by the way, when I say creative, you could have literally just divided it, but because most people are idiots, it obfuscated it in an interesting way, where what he did was he just told you relative to how many wins they had, like where you would be placed 1 to 10. And so I know a lot of people immediately got lost by that and like couldn't understand like what it meant about Team Liquid and stuff. Like, even though it meant like, well, they got a lot of wins, but they obviously spent really a lot of money. Whereas if Cloud9 came like second, and they, you know, like I thought it was easy to follow. Like, I don't remember though off the top of my head where FlyQuest was. I think you were maybe like 4 or 5 on his list or something.
It should have been around the middle, just from my understanding of salaries across the league. And I think there was some revelations about what the potential contract renewals of some of those players are. Right. You know, we can talk about that too. I'm not privy on those.
I'll mention it later.
I just wanted to essentially know, like, you know, like you kind of hint at that, like what the kind of ballpark, like where is FlyQuest operating at? Because the problem is, to me, FlyQuest, like to me, Echo Fox, FlyQuest, these dogs are all the same to me. Like, I only think Echo Fox gets the pop because Rick Fox, basically. Like, aside from that, they're new rogues that came in. They definitely had some money, but no one knows quite how much. And the problem is, there's always a problem in League of Legends, is you actually can't judge how much money a team has by who the players are. Like, you never know what deal that guy gets. Like, for example, if I had to guess, I would imagine someone like Paul Belt probably got a pretty decent deal. He was coming off all those championships. I know to fans, they'd be like, but wasn't he the 4th or 5th best mid? It doesn't work that way. Like if anyone doesn't know, if you go watch the UFC, when they put the payouts for the fighters in the UFC, there'll be some guy you think is washed up, but he's a big name still. and he might still be like, maybe he's like 8th in his division. He might be getting paid 300,000. The guy who's the up-and-coming challenger who's risen really quickly, he might be 4th in the rankings, but he might be getting 80,000. Like, you never know the economics. So what, like, as a ballpark, like, is FlyQuest, for example, a team that's supposed to challenge for the championship in terms of payroll? We're talking like realistic expectations.
Yeah. I would say it's definitely a playoff budget. Just compared to the other teams, that's another thing you have to take into context as well, is just how much the other teams are spending. And I think FlyQuest was definitely a playoff budget in that regard. Just kind of middle of the pack, not necessarily overspending. Initially, remember that these kind of new values that are being thrown out are renewals for this next year as well, so they don't necessarily reflect what last year's payment of these players and other players were. A great example of this is, I think, before Bjerg resigned, like, he was grossly underpaid, right? Yes. Compared to the value that he brought to TSM. And so, the timing of these things affects it as well, where some players signed before franchising even hit, and as a result, those salaries are deflated compared to the player value.
I can actually tell people an interesting anecdote like that to explain how, because people will think, like, how could that exist in a business like that? Like, I know, for example, some naive fans might even think that, like, well, what the fuck? Why didn't Reggie take care of him? Why didn't he just come and re-up his deal? It's like, that would make no sense as a business. Like, I'm sorry, if you signed one of the best players, because here's the key detail. When they signed Bjergsen, it was a banging deal. It was a really good one. Mm-hmm. The problem is the growth was, I won't use the word exponential because people use that as though it's like a real thing. Like, mathematically, it's not exponential, but it was, put this way, incredibly rapid inflation, pretty much, unfortunately, from the time Bjergsen signed his deals. And then with some of the import aspects, it's gotten even crazier. So what really happened was Bjergsen signed at the time a good deal, and then it became not as good a deal for him later. But he couldn't have known that. TSM did not trick him. And actually, in that scenario, I'm sorry, if TSM ever wants to be a viable business, you just have to hold the guy to that deal. Like, the only times I've ever heard, basically, of people, like, literally just pointlessly giving money away is in Counter-Strike. When the first inflation happened, they basically just sometimes, like, agreed to break and re-up the deal just to, like, extend the contract. That was the only reason they did it. Just because, if 2 months later the best team would leave, you do it to make it a year, and you say, right, well, we'll get you to where you should be. Okay, what are you going to say?
So LCS teams do that also. Like, if you're on a cheaper deal, and then the player is, like, outraged, and then the owner will be like, well, you're right. Like, your salary is too low compared to your value, but we want to extend your contract an additional year or additional 2 years for upping it while in middle of contract.
But I've got, anyway, the little anecdote I'll tell people, because it'll be a player people are interested to know about, they just won't know this anecdote, is most people, the consensus in basketball, especially in the last 30 years, is that Michael Jordan is the best player ever in basketball. Mm-hmm. But what a lot of people won't know is when he signed one of his long-term contracts in the NBA, when he actually was the best player, unfortunately, was exactly this scenario. He signed, and because he'd initially come off like a really good rookie contract, but they can never be that big, what happened was he basically was like super horny to get, like, at the time, a good contract. And I think from what I remember that, like, the Bulls owner, Jerry Reinsdorf, even told him, like, you don't want to sign this deal now, mate. Like, I'd just wait a bit, like, wait a year, see where it goes. But the problem is, at the time, he was so horny for, like, it's time to get paid. Like, I had my rookie contract, it's time you pay me now, because at the team wasn't winning. So what he did essentially was he signed a contract similar to Bjergsen's. At the time, it was good. I think it was like 1-2 million. But that's how low the salary was in the NBA, because, like, free agency wasn't a big deal back then.
Those are Huni numbers.
With the same team. Well, here's the crazy thing. Literally only 1 or 2 years later, inflation had already made salaries so that, like, I think the famous example was a player called Hot Rod Wilson, who was, like, I think he was like the second best power forward. But put it this way, he wouldn't have been like a top 10 player in the NBA. That guy was already on something like, I think, 6 million. I'm throwing out numbers that are vague here, but you get the premise. He was on, say, 6 million when Michael Jordan was on 1.5 million. Mm-hmm. That's when the Bulls won their first 3 championships. So obviously Michael Jordan's winning them, but he's going like, fuck is this? Like, I win the championship. I've gotten worse than this guy who's never even going to win any championships. And so what happened was, after his retirement, when he came back, what a lot of people don't know is that he didn't actually have this, like, long contract that meant, like, he came back and all that. When he re-upped, off the top of my head, I think maybe the contract ended after the first championship back, 96. And then what's very interesting is, because Michael Jordan was already something like, I think he was maybe 36 years old, which is pretty old back then in basketball terms, without sports psych like we have and tech like we have now. Basically, the owner of the Bulls said, actually, I'll go out of my way and basically sort of like make up for what happened before. Because I get it now. You've won me 4 championships. It's kind of fucked up that I only paid you this much. So what he did was he literally paid Michael Jordan something mental. I think he even like avoided the salary cap and did some of it through signing bonuses. Sure. He did something mad, like paid a 1-year contract for like $20 million. Now, again, $20 million is it's not even the top rate now, but it's still a pretty good rate now for a start.
For a
Back then,
player.
it was bonkers numbers. But here's the cool thing. Because they won the championship again in dominant fashion, he did it again. The owner said, you know what, fuck it. I'll re-up for another year, another $20 million, Michael. And then after that, that's actually one of the reasons people don't know that the Bulls stopped after 6 titles. Actually, Michael Jordan, a few of the others did want to do it again. But because the Bulls had decided, like, well, first of all, this is the gamble, I'm going to tie it into Bjergsen. You can't win the championship forever, and if these things are costing me 20 million pop, and I've got to keep the rest of the championship team, well, there's a reason why in on the business end of sports, you do the year where you break it all apart, and then you reset everything, and then you pick who you're going to build around and go up again. So basically, they decided, yeah, listen, you were kind of pushing it on that last year. Like, you barely got through. You had a 7-game series in the conference finals. I don't know if you'd win it next year. And then they basically also fired the coach, Phil Jackson, right? So that's why, actually, Michael Jordan's second retirement happened. And he didn't, even though I believe he actually maybe could have. He would have had a chance to. Could have won a couple more rings, actually. People don't know that. So the reason why I tie that in is because that's actually what, if you remember on this show before we knew what the deal was, Loco, I actually thought that's what that TSM should genuinely consider. They should genuinely consider, since now if we sign Bjergsen, it's going to have to be a massive contract. Like, he can go elsewhere for his name, he can go back to Europe. He has all these reasons basically not to join TSM unless we pay him probably over the market value. And in this case, equity basically is over the market value. So I actually do think, I know fans will never get this because, again, unfortunately, it's too much abstraction between the main point and the player. But basically, it probably was actually the wrong move in terms of the business TSM right now to sign Bjergsen right now for the deal they did. Like, it's very unlikely. Like, put it this way, for that same money, essentially, you probably could have gotten Caps. Like not literally, maybe he wouldn't leave, but, the difference is you could have had the best player now. So I know that'll never make sense to some fans, but I thought it was interesting anecdote to tie in because it kind of shows how many million factors can be at play and how difficult it is, and that you're not just looking how good is this player. Like, I always say, there's a classic line they say in sports and GMs, which is like, it doesn't matter if it's the right player, if it's the wrong price, it's the wrong deal.
That's not how it works in esports. If they want the player, then the wallet suddenly increases. If they have a player they really want to get, then suddenly it's completely okay to overspend. Or if they feel like they're desperate and they need a piece, like they'll overspend for a piece.
I also think a lot of people, when they think about esports budgets as well, and you talked about kind of like having the year to kind of break something up and rebuild accordingly. There's no real system, at least in North America, and we could talk about this when we talk about the rosters. There's no real system to rebuild, right? To start from scratch and to be able to have that ability to kind of take a year off and kind of build up that talent. That does not exist sufficiently in North America.
Put it this way, it doesn't really exist anywhere. That's the reason why when Misfits in Europe tell you they're like taking a bold approach to develop, no, they couldn't get anyone and they had to sign a bunch of people. That's the translation for that, guys. Like, fair play to them. Do what you need to in marketing, baby. But we all know in the business what that means, unfortunately. They didn't choose that.
Like, there's no New Orleans Pelicans equivalent with Zion Williamson, that kind of stuff. There's no kind of rebuilding factor. There's so many other examples in sports, but
there's a few questions along these lines I thought that would be interesting to ask you. Like, for example, obviously one thing, like for anyone who doesn't know, I'll give everyone a very quick summary of what franchise leagues are in terms of sports in America, not esports. Franchise leagues are essentially a cartel of the teams, and you can only play for this many of the teams. Therefore, you have to agree to their terms. Now, luckily in the NBA, they have the best actual negotiations, so they get the most of this in terms of salary. But otherwise, that's the reason why, for example, rookie contracts still exist, where you could come in the league and you could literally be the best player from day one, but you can never be the highest paid from day one. It's impossible. So essentially, right, the reason I preambled it like that is people are going to immediately start thinking, well, that's fucked up, isn't it? It's like, well, no, unfortunately, it's a business. And actually, when you're starting with a player from scratch, you wouldn't want to give him a 30 million contract. Like, I can tell you, that's actually a nightmare if you're in a situation like that. There's famous examples. I think Glenn Robinson was a classic one where they gave like 80 million to this guy. He never was worth that in the end, I'm afraid. He was just a good player, not a god. So do you actually think in something like a franchise league, because we had an episode with Rich where essentially we revealed that most of the teams lose money. It's very, very difficult with how big the salaries are. It just makes perfect sense if you do the maths. Do you think that something like rookie contracts would be a good idea for brand new players? Would that be reasonable in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I think generally like the way traditional sports leagues approach salary caps and kind of structured contracts. So in the NBA, there's rookie scale contracts and the max and the super max if you're an absolutely insane player. Those are things that are tied from a collective bargaining agreement. And now there's so many different kind of trap doors to players unionizing and having that collective bargaining agreement to even have those kinds of things in the first place and protect middle class and lower class quality players. Like, think about this, right? We just talked about Bjergsen. How kind of weird is it that you could potentially have a collective bargaining agreement involving an owner of a team, right? Like, just think about the metrics of that and just how difficult it would be to unionize. And then you have to ask the questions like, are you going to unionize without that player? Like, how does that work? That's pretty messed up too, where one player falls out of the purview.
Basically,
Bjergsen has a position on Players Association while being a fight. He has a position,
right?
Well, here's the thing. What he's implying there, by the way, is not just like, isn't that an interesting observation? Is like that actually, by the way, helps the owners. Now you can't unionize properly in the traditional sense. Like, you cannot basically hold all the talent against you because one of them is on the other fucking side as well. And I can tell you, actually, in that scenario, in theory, Bjergsen actually should be tipped more towards the ownership side because that's the shit that's going to be going on in the future.
Forever. He's not going to be a player forever.
So, like, the point he's making here is that's actually, unfortunately, probably a roadblock to getting something better for players in the future.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if Doublelift gets that in the future also, and you don't have Bjergsen and Doublelift in like the player association or not looking out for the best interests of players? Like, currently our player association president is Darshan. I'm not sure how much sway or power he holds in like the big picture of things. Like, Bjergsen and Double hold so much power within the players. Like, in terms of being able to talk to the owners and in terms of being able to convince the other players. Like, if they tell you guys to do something, like as a duo, I think that holds so much weight. If Darshan is telling me to do something, I'll be like,
Well, it goes through Riot, right? Mm-hmm. It's not like Darshan is like at the podium talking about like the next steps. Like, he's working with Riot. I actually saw him at scouting grounds when I was there, just kind of literally talking to Hal Biagis and Riot LCS people, like talking about the ways in which they can improve North America talent development and professional development.
Obvious joke there would have been like, how did he do? Anyone pick him up?
Alright. Let's actually get talking about. We'll start with FlyQuest roster. So this one you're going to find really interesting.
I actually know nothing about the FlyQuest roster.
Okay, so FlyQuest roster has been completely confirmed. It's Viper up top, Centauran in the jungle, Power Evil in mid lane,
right, I do
Turtle at AD carry, and Ignar in support. So something very interesting. So Travis Gafford revealed a rumor regarding Centauran's salary at 500, and then Turtle salary at 700. I was shocked, so I asked around a little, and from what I heard, it's Turtle was on a scaling contract, on a 3-year scaling contract where it went 500, 500, 700, and this year it's 700. Invert, no need to confirm, no need to unconfirm. But that's what I heard. 500, 500,
the thing is,
700.
when you say that,
this is
like,
that year.
Again, you have to think, right? Not only do things like Twitter followers matter, it's also like what you've done recently. So again, just as signing Paul Belter when he comes off back-to-back championship, isn't that ridiculous? In fact, I think Paul Belter had been in 3 finals in a row at that point in time, 2 different teams. So actually at the time, you might have even thought maybe he'll be one of the best performers. Similarly, Wild Turtle, when they signed him, would have been what, like a year and something removed from a championship himself. Like, remember, he just stood in for TSM, still won the championship. Like, these are factors that, problem is, fans only look day to day, but you have to look in the recent past as well. Okay, you have something to say on that?
Yeah, one of the things that people don't realize when they think about at least last year or this year's FlyQuest roster is just how much championship experience was even on that roster in the first place, right? You alluded to Po Belter and Turtles championships, how far, back to back, but also Eugene has 3 total, and then
Centauran has 1.
Centauran has 1, Wild Turtle has 5, I believe. And so that's a huge wealth of championship experience. And then, if we're talking about me, when I came from academy before moving to the LCS head coach position, I had won an academy championship, and I'm bringing in JJ, who had also won one, and then Viper was the only person who didn't really win anything. Still a great player, but didn't have that kind of playoff experience. That kind of things as well, those kinds of things as well, you have to consider when you think about what a player is making, and how those negotiations even go, and how they kind of are structured and continue to process.
Well, and I'm sure as well, if you're going to use rookies like that, I don't know technically if they were they actually both rookies at the time?
So Viper was a rookie in spring, and JJ had played the previous split.
Right. Well, effectively rookies, colloquially. If you're going to have two rookies like that, you also want people who are championship, caliber at least at some point, and they can give some of that knowledge over, hopefully.
Exactly. So that kind of roster construction and the theory behind it was sound as a result of when you think about it from that perspective. And then these are also players with chips on their shoulder, where like Santorin and Pobelter in particular are players that like really want to prove themselves. So they'll, have that incredible work ethic to show people that, they are not the reason that the teams they were on were bad. And in fact, they're quality players in their own right.
Mm-hmm. So Duncan, I'm surprised you're not going ham at the 700 turtle angle.
Yeah, we'll do that in a second. If the players on FlyQuest were chips, what type of chips would they be? Here's my take. I think that wild turtle would probably be something like, I know unfortunately you guys don't know this flavor, but there's a flavor. It's actually a type of vegetable spread in England and Australia
Vegemite?
called Marmite.
Oh,
Vegemite.
I know.
And the whole premise of it is you either love it or you fucking hate it, because I think it's disgusting, but some people love it. Like, it's a very savory taste. It's just not my shit. I'd say wild turtles like that, because people either totally dig the personality and love the playing style, or if you were like Monty, I'm pretty sure that's like a nightmare AD carry that you'd never want on your team anyway. It represents everything you don't want in a player. Then if I'm going with Pobelter, obviously just plain salted layers. Now you're all going to think, oh, why is he hating on him? Listen, it's boring, fairly popular. It's always going to do well. It's never going to be the worst flavor. It's always going to be right around the middle. A lot of people can appreciate it, but no one really loves the ready salted, although I've actually noticed some Americans do, and I believe that they are mentally ill. But let's just keep that one aside. Then we go to Santorin. Now, you're probably wondering, where am I going on this one? Santorin would be like when you get some chips that say on the packet, spicy, because Loco famously said Santorin had 9.5 out of 10 level mechanics if Faker was a 10. So when Loco eats them, he's going, bloody hell, they're strong. I eat them and go, was that like half a pepper worth of... It's just like paprika. It's not in there. Like, anyway, that's the whole skit. Now, why would I go mad about the 700k for Wild Turtle, though?
What? You don't think it's ridiculous? I had Turtle ranked as one of the worst AD carries.
Wait a minute. Like, as you said, it was a scaling contract, right? Mm-hmm. So, like, can you give us a ballpark as to what it started at? Did it start
500, 500, 700. So 3 years.
500's not that crazy for when he was being signed. Like, I don't remember when they say league average was 300,000. That means there's a whole bunch of shitters getting fucking probably like 90k, and then
like
there's the massive.
Is the minimum, yeah.
Then there's the big hitters that are getting the million and more. So I don't think that's that crazy. 500k for Wild Turtle. Like, if you have to gamble, remember FlyQuest wasn't in a position with all superstar players. Like, that's not a terrible gamble, I don't think.
I just think no one is like beholden to the contract unless it's a guaranteed contract. I have no information on if it's a guaranteed contract or a non-guaranteed contract. But more likely than not, it's a non-guaranteed contract.
Oh, you mean they should have just taken the 500 and not done the 700 part of it?
Yeah, they should have had him for 500. This is the 700 year. Turtle, we don't think you're worth 700.
Then Invert?
I mean, players are represented by agents, and agents don't like when a team comes to them and is like, hey, let's cut your player's salary because that affects their bottom line, and then obviously they're representing the best interests of the player themselves, who want the most money as possible.
And also 20%.
Yeah, or
and 20%, 700k is a lot more than 500k.
Yeah. So I've heard of like managers doing that, and then obviously agents and players fight back. I've heard a lot about Europe actually, where there were equally similar salaries for some players in Europe, and teams actually approached those players and were like, hey, like we need to cut these salaries so that we can approach our operating budget in a much more sustainable and also like better way for you guys when it comes to like developing infrastructure. And those European players accepted it for the most part. So
Jesus Christ.
So it's pretty interesting kind of how you have that kind of collective communal thinking in that sense.
I mean, it mirrors the
I,
famous thing, with the like competitive angle that the European players traditionally just mainly want to win. I mean, they don't think about the money as much as the NA players in theory. Because I have to say, like, I would tell if one of those players is one of the players who's one of my friends, I would tell them, do not do this deal on any circumstance. If you have them signed that they have to pay you that much, these guys will cut you next year if you're not good, mate. Why the fuck are you going to give these guys a discount? Like, why are you being loyal to someone who has not been loyal to you?
Yeah, I hate the whole team loyalty angle. Like, be loyal to your team. Like, what is it? Help them out whenever you can. Like, dude, if you suck, they're going to cut you. There is going to be no loyalty. They will be fucking cold-blooded.
I don't want to suggest that North American players are like obscenely greedy or whatever either.
No. I don't think it's greedy to take what's in your contract. That's it. It's actually overly generous to the European players.
Yeah, that's what I think too. So, anyways, about the current roster itself, it's Power of Evil and Ignar, and I actually really like this roster. I think it's really sneaky good. I might have some bias from working with some of these players in the past, but you kind of know the high highs of Viper and Santorin if you watch the spring split. And
been a while since anyone said the word sneaky and good in the same sentence.
And I think people really underrate Ignar and what Ignar can bring to a team in North America. So on Schalke, he played very, very well, and he played with Upset, and he was actually really good. And the big thing about Ignar is the way he plays. He's mechanically good, and he's very similar to Core JJ, where he'll get the right wards on the map, and he'll kind of optimize those wards very well. And his recall timings are really good, where he comes back on the map super quickly. And I think that was one of the main weaknesses for the 2019 roster, where the vision just wasn't good enough, and it wasn't consistent enough, and the quality of it wasn't good. So the team, we worked on it as much as we could, and it didn't work out, and the team made bad decisions in game because they didn't have the right information. They didn't work well enough on vision together, and I think Ignar's going to bring more consistency in lane, which Wadid unfortunately couldn't provide with Wild Turtle, and be able to have that movement too. So
from Ignar's perspective, this is something that Dom mentioned, but he's going to go from Upset, one of the best AD carries in the West, to Turtle, unfortunately one of the worst AD carries in the West. So I'm very curious how his mindset's going to be and how that duo is going to work out.
How much of that do you think was due to like the laning issues that Turtle
isn't that a bit weird,
with
Wadid? If I'll ask you, Loco, now to list your top 8 Western AD carries, none of them have a fucking, listen, I don't give a fuck that this guy's from FlyQuest. He's not on the team anymore anyway. None of them had JJ as their support. They all had banners as their support.
Yeah.
In fact, I even made the point on the World Show, and when you looked at it over the year, that one of the reasons I absolutely do subscribe to the idea ADC was mad underpowered is all the star players in the bot lane were the fucking support players. They were the ones that were all the MVP candidates in every region. So how, in a world where, in theory, by your logic, right, JJ would have been one of the worst supports in LCS Loco. So,
for sure.
Turtle wasn't working much, was he?
He wasn't working.
Put it this way, I thought in spring he was good. I agree. In summer, the whole team had problems,
And if you think about 2018, he was playing with Conquan, and that was not that fun either, right? So I don't think Wild Turtle has had a good laning partner, at least one that fit his style, over the last 2 years, right? And I think moving into this year, this is the chance for him to prove you have this good support now, you have the support that fits your style, and he's going to patch a lot of the weaknesses that this 2019 FlyQuest roster had. So it's really on you to live up to your contract, live up to your style, and be able to get back to that championship AD carry form. And I think Ignar is good enough that you can do that, but we need to see that work as well. So
I'll be more open-minded about it after hearing what you guys had to say. Turtle definitely had way worse laning partners than his competition, but it also...
Here's the thing, your premise is right. Obviously, Upset was better than Wild Turtle. That's not an unfair premise.
But I do worry for that bot lane and how it's going to look. And the other thing about this roster, we've seen the Ignar Power of Evil roster before too. And Ignar and Power of Evil, they have really not changed their playstyle. Ignar loves playing hook champions, loves playing engage champions, loves being played towards. Power of Evil loves these certain control mages. He never really truly picked up Irelia, Akali last year. So I think there will be a set style with this team. Once they figure it out, they'll be really good at. What I'm very curious about is how much depth this team is going to have beyond that. How good is Viper going to be in his year 2? And Revenge underneath him, how is he going to develop? I'm actually really excited about Revenge and seeing how he plays. So yeah, I think FlyQuest will struggle a bit until they get to like the point where their roster is like functioning and everyone's doing their job and they know what kind of style they want to run. But after that, that's where I'm really curious. Does this team have depth? Like, can they pick up multiple champions? Or are they going to be this, like, bot lane oriented team and then later on team fight around Power People with control mages? So, yeah, I'm really curious about what the future looks for, not just the initial outlook.
And, you know, I'm not there anymore, but I do think people should trust the coaching staff that they have as well to be able to find that team identity. So now it's... Curry, Cop, and someone who's...
Oh, right. We actually had that Curry guy on this year, I think, actually.
Yeah. So I think people who are FlyQuest fans can trust that group to kind of find that team identity and build on it with that level of quality in the players they have. So...
Right, here's my take. So first of all, I'll have to say, because like I said, I'm not actually sure what all the roster moves are. I can't yet speculate like where the team would be in the league. I'll maybe do that later when I know all the roster moves, etc. But like this already sounds like a playoff team to me. I mean, I look at the players there. I think there's quality there. I even think actually they picked like Viper was the obvious rookie to stick with. He's the player who's probably the X factor. Like the others, you don't expect to have a big peak in their career after so long. You just want them to do what they've been able to do relative to the rest of the league for most of their careers. And there's the potential, as I said, that this brings more out of Wild Turtle. To me, the weird angle for me is that Loco's downplaying like Power of Evil being added, because to me, he's just like a better version of Poor Belter. I would even say probably even with like I personally think probably with a stronger mindset.
Definitely an upgrade.
So I like that. So I actually think this squad's pretty strong. I think actually what's good is Viper doesn't have to carry the whole game. He's got pretty good players in other lanes, but if he can develop into that, Power of Evil can, as you say, just farm and then be the team fight carry. Like, actually sounds like a pretty solid team. Yeah. If anything, this is my question, Loco. You're always bigging up fucking Santorin every chance you get. You never said his name in the fucking summer season because that's just what you're like. You just
I still think Lucas is good.
But so here's the question then. Yeah. If you love him, you think he's good, and you think Viper's a good rookie, as you did, and then, okay, you did used to say, you once tried to say Power of Evil was better than Froggen. Like,
still do.
Again, that was earlier this year. Get the fuck out my face. By the way, did you see that thread on Froggen, by the way, where he had like some of the best stats in the entire league, even in the shit called the Guardian split?
Stats needs context. Stats needs context.
Yeah, all right. Well, you know what one of the stats was? Kill percentage, like how close he was. How do you do that by farming, cocksucker? Exactly. Shut the fuck up.
Because the team overall gets low amount of kills.
You were going to be like an NP... You absolute bitch. No, they didn't.
I'll go and check the Reddit thread after. Okay, I'll check it after.
You're just going to use that NPC line of like, but I bet it was just CSDM and he played COG more, like 7-year-old fucking points that no one even brings up anymore. Like, so anyway, point is, if you're a massive fan of Santorin and most of these other players, you should be bigging this squad up. Like, the jungler does so much in the meta right now, Loco. Surely Santorin should be unlocking all these players.
Well, season 10, I've heard junglers are just like absolutely useless just due to
That's what they say after every fucking offseason. It's usually just junglers saying it in it for fun. I get it. Listen, boys, you have to change your job every year. 1 year you're a fucking plumber, next year you're an electrician, next year you're a babysitter. I get it. It sucks. But you know what? Single mother's got to work to earn a living. Sorry, that's just the way it is, okay? So look after all those kids. They're not your kids, but look after them anyway. Do the best you can. Like, we'll see how it goes.
I think this roster will be good once they figure stuff out. It's my real big question is, does this roster have depth? Because that's not something Power People has shown.
What does depth mean, though?
Like, being able to play multiple styles, being able to play well when people figure you out and they start doing target bans. Like, a lot of teams have, like, one way they want to win and one style they want to win. And when that style gets really figured out, or certain meta champions get bumped out, or you get target banned, that style breaks apart. So I want to see if this team can function.
Well, here's the thing, Loco. That's the angle that I've never understood, why you hold that as a negative against, for example, Froggen and Power of Evil. You always say, like, they're not even playing all the meta champions. Brilliant. How the fuck are they going to target ban us then? They either have to give us the most powerful meta champions, which any idiot can pilot in the mid lane, or we just play shit like what we play anyway every season because we're Power of Evil and Froggen, which as a result is another mad advantage. Like, there's another thing about Froggen you never brought up, is he literally warped the entire fucking scrim meta and had all the other teams changing what they were doing. Like, stuff like that has like implicit value is what it's called, Loco. It's not inherent. You can't just see it on the page, but it adds like extra value to what you see, what you don't see, basically.
So the thing is, that wasn't the case. It's not they were playing the most powerful champions. They actually weren't. Power of Evil was not playing Irelia Akali, and it was a problem for CLG where they had to ban those on blue side, or they had to give it and play against it in a really disadvantaged manner.
Yeah, he did try to play some stuff. I believe he played Irelia and got a solo kill.
He got one game.
Yeah, and then he tried playing Kiana, and then Clutch had a really good response where they flexed the Renekton into the Kiana, and you ended up seeing that at Worlds a bit as well, where Faker was doing it, and it was just a really solid strategy against the champion. But yeah, I think they play it. I can say for sure that those teams, like those players, play that stuff in scrims. I don't know if it's a confidence thing or whether they choose to go a completely different route when it comes to stage play. But you should be confident in players like Power of Evil and Froggen in being able to pick up those champions as they come about. Whether there's a new Irelia or Akali type champion, or those champions become meta again. I think you can be confident that those players can pick it up, because like Thorin said, like it's not particularly hard to pick up those champions and do okay with them at the very least, especially by NALCS standards.
Okay.
But I will say, like I said, playoff team only. Like, I'm not going crazy. Like, they're not going to fucking win the LCS. Like, that's not even a possibility. So I'm just saying playoffs only. We'll see from there, because so much to me is contingent on what is the bot lane synergy like, and then what the fuck does Viper do? Because I've brought this up before, so I won't hammer it completely. But like the Locodoco, basically evaluates players like a fucking guy trying to do some sort of a confidence scam on you, where he's like, right, you made $10 this year. If we chart that up from here to here, we expand it out 10 years, you're a fucking millionaire, son. Like, he does that, right? Whereas I always tell him, like, the line can go. Like, basically, I'm just actually really, really grateful Loco didn't have the liquid assets to buy into Bitcoin at 20,000, because this motherfucker would have seen the line and bought it at 20,000. And then when it went to 15,000, and everyone was telling me, Loco, sell Loco, he'd be going, but I need to get my money back. And then he'd roll that motherfucker right down. And then you know what's best? Because he'd have really needed the money, eventually he would have sold at 5k.
You know what's...
I'm just giving you an alternate future of what Loco would have definitely done if he'd invested in fucking crypto.
Huge sunk cost fallacy.
You know what happened? So Ethereum was at like 1,000, and then it dipped below 1,000. It dipped below to like 800, and I was like, holy shit, Ethereum below 1,000. This is a fucking opportunity of a lifetime.
I knew it.
So I bought $10,000 worth of Ethereum. So at that point, I had $100,000 that I set aside to invest in, and I had a financial advisor. And then I was convinced.
Wait a second. One sec. You listen. The first part of that was brilliant. You had $100,000. By the way, props. Not a lot of people save that money up. Not a lot of people are smart enough to try and invest it.
At that your age, too.
This is what I don't get. You had $100,000 and a financial advisor.
Yeah.
But you just saw that Ethereum went down and invested.
No, okay. So
maybe listen to the financial advisor. He could probably put you.
Wait, let me tell the full story. So I had $100,000, and I wanted to invest it all $100,000 in Ethereum, and my financial advisor told me I was fucking crazy.
Holy shit! And I was right. He would have done it.
He stopped you.
Yeah.
This guy's a legend, whoever he is.
And then he told me, what is it? You should divide it up between fidelity and cryptocurrency. So I was like, okay, I'll put $90,000.
I've never heard of the word fidelity, though. That's the problem, It actually goes against his ethos. But keep going.
I'll put $90,000 in Ethereum and $10,000 in fidelity. And then he's like, we should switch it around. Just really trust me. Like, I am looking out for your best interest. Like, even $10,000 in Ethereum, like, that is still a lot. Like, if Ethereum blows up, like, you'll be fine. So what
was the fidelity at the time? Did you say? Like, a very low amount, I'm guessing.
No, fidelity is like it's not a coin. It's like Vanguard. It's like just like a fund you put your money in and you forget about.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like 401k.
It's like putting in a hedge fund if you're rich or whatever. And they just trust that you take care of it, right? Okay.
So I ended up putting 10,000 in Ethereum and 90,000 in Fidelity, and then Ethereum dipped below 200 and it never rose above 200 again. But you made money
off the Fidelity one, right?
Yeah, I made decent money off the Fidelity. But Ethereum, it basically turned into monopoly money like the month after I invested.
Yeah, but that's also because there's the problem, right? What's the real reason you invested in the Ethereum? Because you thought it might just triple, quadruple.
Yeah.
But you had no reason to.
I thought I was late. I was like, oh my god.
But if you saw it go down, wouldn't your line of thinking make it
I
believe that it would continue to go down?
I was like, hodl.
Yeah.
Basically, you know what I've just realised that's so sick, Invert, is I gave him too much credit. I said he'd just buy it. He bought him when it started dropping and was just like... but it's going back up. Like, and everyone's like, but why? It's like, you literally were late to the party. Holy shit, that's amazing.
No, it did go up to 1,400.
You were trying to upgrade to first class on the Titanic as it was hitting the fucking iceberg.
Hey, that just means you're higher up. You sink last, right?
Yeah.
You're going down anyways. Yeah.
It went up to 1,400, and I was like, oh my god, I'm just making money sitting here. Holy shit, I'm doing such a good job. Adulting is easy peasy. Okay.
Actually, speaking of which, what's good is, this is just CSGO related, but since Origin obviously is owned by the same group that owns Astralis, it was announced today that Astralis, the CS team, is going to basically do an IPO. They're going to do public offering where you can buy shares.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Now, first of all, I've heard the shares. Well, I won't say what the price of that's, but it might be a bit dodgy. This is what I think's mad about that no one's stopped to think about. Right? Esports already has enough fucking shady, vague things going on in it. The last thing I need is in 5 years for a whole bunch of fucking people in esports to be getting slammed by the SEC for fucking insider trading and go to prison for life. Like, you're like Elon Musk, mate. You're not paying that fine and the bribe. You're just going straight to federal prison where you will be losing all those assets. Like, that's going to be a sad, sad day because I love Astralis and all the people from Astralis. Well, the team anyway. Fuck the owners, obviously. Y'all know how I roll. So anyway, let's do some other teams.
Wait, final topic about FlyQuest before we move on. Did you read the Pobelter Dunzo Manifesto? Pobelter wrote a 2-page essay on Twitlonger talking about how he's not appreciated, how he couldn't believe that he's not starting for a team, and then he went back and talked about 2017, 2018 Worlds games, how he had to sacrifice a lot for the team. What's your point of view on Pobelter not being on a team, Dolphin?
Wait a minute. So he commented on the Immortals failure when they were in that group where there was fucking Fnatic and Kingzone. I think they were Kingzone at the time. No, maybe they were Long Dew at the time. And then did he comment on
the TL one also? Yeah.
Oh, the Team Liquid one as well.
Yeah.
What did he say in the Team Liquid one? Because that was the one that would be vaguely interesting.
He's like, I made sacrifices, and then I played Galio into Azir to make sure we had priority, and then I was slamming mid, but we weren't getting stuff done. He admitted where he had faults too, but he basically went back and commented on every game that was played at Worlds and why they failed, and how some of it wasn't his fault, and how he made sacrifices that wasn't appreciated.
My first reaction is it's actually quite sad that someone like Pobelter is doing that, because that's actually not in keeping with his personality from the little I know about him as a person. That sounds to me like he's done that because he's frustrated he didn't get a starting spot. As you say, he feels underappreciated, and that's really the only card he has to play, right? What drama can Pobelter start? The only way he can really do anything is what he's trying to do in saying that. This is an example of where you've done something a bit fucked up there. In my personal opinion, I've told you a million times, if I'm a coach, no one ever speaks outside the locker room about what happens inside the locker room. That's literally a promise that everyone makes to each other. Because if you can't maintain that, how the fuck can you trust anyone? How can you trust someone in the game? How can you trust the coach to do the right thing by you? You gotta all be on the same page in that regard. So I personally would have guessed Pobelter would be someone who wouldn't let that sort of thing leak out. He hasn't in the past. The problem is, I also do kind of get that he's almost forced to, because this is the way narratives work and this is where reputations work. If people think, right, Pobelter, he's that guy who's just good enough to win the LCS, but then he's shit every time he goes international and just chokes, but then you don't know the context that he was asked to sacrifice, or he just chose to sacrifice, or maybe he covered a weakness in the champion pool of someone else. The problem with that is, at the end of the day, we're not in the coaching room. We never get that information. So we just think he wanted to play Galio. Maybe that's even all he could play. Someone might think if that's a bad matchup. I get that. Unfortunately, in that scenario, it's very tough to basically, here's what I would have just said. Because if I'm someone like Pobelter, as far as I'm concerned, has a pretty immaculate reputation and record. I've never seen much drama from him. Seems like a pretty chill guy. Seems to be well liked by all his former teammates. You don't hear them talking shit on him generally. One thing I would say is, I just think you took the wrong approach on this one. What you should have done is say the rest of it. Say, I felt I was underappreciated. This didn't happen. Leak the rest through a journalist or something. Send a story. But get the juicy part that basically would look bad for you to reveal, and do that through one level of abstraction. Because you could still, for example, if you told me that story, I could say I heard it from someone else and then tell the story myself, and the same info could get out there. But then there's even the plausible deniability of Storm, what does he know? Something. You don't get kind of the stain, because the problem here is, I've made this point a million times, and this will apply to Pobelter. That now makes me a bit more hesitant to sign him, because what if the same shit happens and then he's talking about me in a Twitlonger next year? I know players don't think ahead like that, but you actually do have to if you're a guy who's in fucking management, in my opinion. I know it's extenuating circumstances, but it's not a good look, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, he just feels pretty shitty, and he was so mad that he couldn't even get opportunities. He couldn't try
the problem with this is, maybe we'll put a pin in this and come back at the end, because I'll have to know all the mids before I can decide. I will say, for example, there are some names I know are coming that I think on paper Pobelt is better than. So initial premises, I kind of agree with him. I feel he's hard done by there, and I think it's a bit fucked that one split can just end your career effectively.
I completely agree with you.
Pick a team. Duncan, pick a team. Any team.
Well, I know one of them. I knew a whole bunch of it. So a fun one is obviously Immortals.
Okay.
Returning to the LCS.
Immortals roster is Soaz at top, Xmithy jungle, Aka mid lane, Altic AD carry, and Hakua support. So
right, the problem here is, we'll just start with those names. So the funny thing is, the player I'm obviously the most comfortable with is actually Soaz. Like, I've told you a million times, mate, your fans are just going to have to learn the hard way that they're dumb motherfuckers if they just turn whichever way the wind blows. Like, that's not the way these games work. There's a reason why Soaz was bored of playing League of Legends, the game, in 2013, and since then went to Worlds a whole bunch of times and did all kinds of crazy shit and won many championships. This guy is a fucking unbelievable League of Legends player with, like, not just, I don't even say just talent. He has, like, unique talent, like his ability to just literally turn it on. I don't think I've ever seen any League of Legends player ever go from being like humdrum on, say, week 4 to like week 9 just before the playoffs that you're the best player at your position. Like, that's normal people can't do that. Like, if you think any of the players in the NFL, etc., just no one's chilling. Like, that's a nonsense. No one's like relaxing for the week. They're just not playing well at that point in time. Normal players can't turn it on. So when you can do that, and you've done it 3 or 4 different times, I'll give you another crack. I don't mind the fact that you had a bad time in Misfits. If you look at Misfits, everyone had a bad time in Misfits.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna. That's what I was gonna say too. Like that. Like,
and it had every factor when you found out the inside stuff as to why everyone would be playing back. It made a lot of sense. Like, I think a lot of those players can be redeemed. I don't wipe them all off the board entirely myself. So as for me, I don't know what. Listen, I imagine they probably had to pay him a lot because he came to NA. That's the downside. So like, the ideal scenario for Soaz would be you'd get him a little bit cheaper because he was on the bad end, and then you get the benefit of it, the gamble. But I'll just say, like, if you want a big name and you want somebody who could potentially become the best again, and in NA, that's a pretty good fucking signing in my opinion.
And I want to say too, like, it's a weird double standard where you can kind of take that Misfits roster that blew up and say like, oh, Hansama's a fit-in rogue that'll make top 4 in Europe or top 3 in Europe, and he came from this roster and he can redeem himself, but we can't say the same for Soaz, which I think is like completely unfair double standard that, you know, Soaz has a even better pedigree than Hansama, even though Hansama made the world semifinals. Like, we should attach that same sort of possibility of redemption from what was a terrible year for Soaz as well. I don't even think he played like that particularly bad, given like how his jungle was playing and how Gorilla was playing. So, you know, we should be able to do that for him as well. I think it's a pretty good pickup.
People probably don't even realize, because they don't watch LEC that closely. They just watch the big games and then speculate, which, fair enough, that's what Reddit's for. If you actually went back to the spring when they were having all that terrible trouble, he was one of the few band-aids. He literally went back to like 2017 Fnatic mode where he just had to play shit that could engage from the top lane. That was like one of the only ways they could get a team fight. So again, just someone where if you talk about players I have trusted to become good again, he's in my top 10 of Western players, absolutely.
So the funny thing about Immortals is there's a lot of French connections. So Sabotage, the head coach, he's the one that really vouched for Aka and picked him up.
Optic coach, if you remember. Yeah.
So I had no idea who this Aka guy was, and then someone reminded me he used to play for Elements way back in 2016 in EULCS when it was called EULCS. So I wanted to do some research, so I talked to Chips. He's the French caster, and then he gave me a little bit of insight on who Aka was. He gave me a good player comparison. He's kind of like Pobelter, but with better mechanics, a really good teammate, plays everything, kind of does what the team needs him to do, a good communicator. And he actually said that Sabotage had opportunities to go for better mid lane, but he really believed in Aka and he brought Aka over. So like a huge like controversy right now is like the talk of nepotism. Like, is Sabotage picking up Aka and Immortals picking up Aka like nepotism? Like, did people with better...
Loco, you know when someone tells you something privately, the first thing you think before you even look at the words they're saying on the surface is, why might this person be telling me this information?
It wasn't private. Because... it was on stream. It was public.
Oh,
it was
fair
public.
Enough, fair enough. But even so, within what he was saying, he already preempted what you've just said there, that people would go, but why not Pobelter? Because he goes, if I had to compare him to a player, Pobelter but better. It's like, yeah, he's done a great job for his mate there, hasn't he? He's fucking done a bang. Like, what was he reading? A fucking Democrat talking points or something. What the fuck are you? What's going on here? Like, yeah, okay. Like, nothing that Iker has ever done, to my knowledge, makes him better than Pobel. Like, Pobel's a fucking LCS champion, motherfucker. Like, this guy just redeemed his career apparently in like what, national leagues? Get the fuck out my face. Like, again, Pobel was going to Worlds when he fell. He had one split. He was maybe bad in his whole career. So slow your motherfucking roll just because he was born in the Republic of France or whatever the fuck. Like, chill on that, fam. Like, this is also the reason, by the way, Loco, why I hate fucking, like, I understand the concept of patriotism for your real country when someone might invade it or you might get killed in a war. I don't understand at all the concept of nationalism in sports. I think it's whack as fuck. So I actually hate when people are like, I'm the French caster. What do you think about this French player? Oh, he's fucking giving me. And then, it's the Spanish caster. Like, get the fuck out my face. Like, you know what? If you ask me about someone from the UK, I'm not like, Max Law. I'll tell you, yeah, Max fucking shit contract law. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, I don't play that game, mate. So obviously this guy bigged him up massively, didn't he? Like, he's just only shown the upside. I actually would say he's quite dishonest. Like, where was the critique? Did he give you any actual critique?
He told me he wasn't like, don't expect him to be a giga carry like what we expect out of Europe.
So I actually watched his team in E-Masters, and I think he was good, but definitely the bot lane for that team is LDLC. It was Comp and Steelback who had switched to support. That bot lane was very much the focal point for that team. So in my experience, I agreed. Like, they didn't really play through him. He used his priority and his ability in lane to help the bot lane more so. And I believe Comp is in LEC now.
Yeah.
And Steelback is rumored to potentially.
I think Vitality.
Schalke, was it?
Yeah.
Okay,
not. I don't remember where Steelback is rumored, but yeah. So I think he was on a pretty successful French roster. They did really well in the French league, and excuse me, and yeah, I think he should be fine. Obviously, there's questions about Pobelter, and I agree with Eugene, and I feel his frustration. I do think he should be starting in the LCS. He's a back-to-back LCS champion. He didn't even have a bad year. He just had a rough split, and some of that stuff I talked about previously on as to why the split went so poorly, at least partially. One of the things I think is really interesting about this roster is the dynamic between jungle and support. So it's Xmithy and Hakuo. And if you recall why people liked Apollo Hakuo so much as a bot lane, it's because Hakuo never talked and Apollo was the one shot calling in lane and kind of out of game for his teams. And because Hakuo is so quiet, I think it actually balances really well with Xmithy, who is known to be that player who just controls the map and kind of tells everyone where to be, what to do, how they should be playing, and kind of setting up the game. I think that's a loss for TL that they can potentially cover, but I do think that dynamic is super interesting with the super quiet support and the super vocal jungler.
My take on this team generally is, like, the main issue is obviously the Iker one, because I didn't particularly watch him. I saw like the odd game of him because his team actually was one of the better ones, but I can't say I've like scouted him or anything. I can't know what his actual level is. And again, it wasn't like he was blowing me away in the EU Masters. He wasn't one of the players like Leader where you were like, I can't wait to see this fucking guy. And like, no, it was like, yeah, if he could make it, and I understand the French angle. Like, by the way, that's even a smart angle if you're Sabotage, because the logic there is I have an access to this scene that no one else does. No NA coach can go in the French scene and talk to these guys and really get the real. They have to wait for Loco to ask the guy to fucking do a puff piece on the show. It should have had fucking hashtag ad at the bottom the whole time. Like an Instagram thing, or you should be put in jail. Like, it's like the problem is they're pumping that part up. So I could see the angle there. It's the same reason, by the way, when we get to this team later. Do you think it's a coincidence that Papa Smithy, one of his first big signings, is a guy from Oceanic region? Papa Smithy is from the Oceanic region. I'm sure he has connections there that again gave him an edge that he probably was able to get insight on this player that no one else could. And as a result, he knew it was worth winning a bidding war potentially for this guy. So in terms of this squad, I have big questions about the mid lane. I genuinely... Listen, I don't think mid lane's the craziest role in the LCS, like, relative to the world. It's not impossible. Iker could be all right, but I don't see him as like a superstar player. The bot lane angle I have massive problems with because, listen, Altec was good a few years ago, but even then he was sort of like good in a limited way. And I certainly do think just historically, he's been a bit of a playoff choker. So I know I have problems with that. I'm actually always been someone who's enjoyed Hakuo. I personally thought that he was actually held back by being branded with Apollo. Like, you got to get this bot lane. They just play safe. It's like, are you for real? Get one of them out there then. Because to me, Apollo was the one who did all that. So that's who Apollo is in his career. He's just, I used to joke he was the poor belter of AD carry. He's just an AD carry that's always going to do all right. He's never going to fuck the game up for you. Problem is, I actually thought Akko had some skills. Like, he seemed like a guy where partner him with someone better, maybe he can do something. I don't know that Altec's that player. Altec himself feels like a similar player to some, I'd even say to some degree, in that sense, to Apollo. So for me, a lot of it's on the jungle top. If the meta's good for that, it could be a very good team. If you have either a jungle mid or a jungle top that's really good in the LCS, you can do work. Optic showed us it. The bunch of squads have showed us it. You don't necessarily have to have a totally complete team, not least because a lot of the teams, as we're going to get into this episode, I think have flaws. Like, one of the interesting things to me, I've brought up this point many times, it goes over some people's heads, is the most interesting aspect of franchising to me is it does remind me of the NBA. In that, in theory, because of the way the salary caps and stuff work in the NBA, in theory, you are all working with a similar budget. Sure, the Lakers can cheat and go 50 mil over if they want to, but that's just actually a rich guy having the prerogative to waste money at an incredible tax rate. Like, normally, the Milwaukee Bucks and whoever else can, in theory, challenge if they get the right players, they do smart one. And so what happens is, the reason they designed the salary cap that way, as well as to keep salaries down, was to distribute talent as evenly as possible. It was to incentivize the third best player on the two-time champions to go to the bad team but get paid as the best player. And therefore, the logic was you never have games that are the equivalent of SK versus the fucking misfits in LEC that no one wants to watch. In theory, you always have a star player. There's always a reason to go to the stadium. It's actually, in terms of an entertainment product, a very clever model. I have my flaws, like qualms with it in terms of, like, you know, player agency and stuff. But again, that's by the by. It's more of a philosophical thing. So my issue in this sense is, like, on a team like this, I get it that you're going to have talent spread out across the league. But as a result, to me, it's more just about, like, your good players being really good and the players that don't do as well just not being a massive liability. It's not about having 5, 6 players. Almost no teams have that except Team Liquid, I think.
So the other weird thing about this roster for me is where's the firepower? Soaz, as we talked about, is versatile, but I wouldn't really call him like a true carry player. Eika, as like the better French pubelter, isn't a carry player. Altec has to be like majority of their firepower, but he's coming off of like 2 years of solo queue and not having.
Put it this way, Soaz wants to be a carry player. The problem here's another thing people don't realize about Soaz. We already consider him one of the greats, and mate, literally since about season 3, he sacrificed every year. He always gave up so that Expeke could carry, and Reckless could carry, and Sven and Mithy could carry. And if that meant that's why he made the dog champ meme. What he was basically saying was like, I fucking hate playing these champions, but it's my job, and if I have to win, I'll do it. That's an amazing quality to have in a teammate right there. But I know for a fact, by the way, this guy, and if you remember back in the day, he used to love playing carries, mate. If he could get him, that's one of the most interesting details people probably don't know is in the modern day, when you have all these tops and mids that can flex champions, that's literally what Expeke and Soaz used to do. That's how they used to run game in the draft on people. You could never know quite what was going mid, because in theory, Soaz might literally just play a mid-champ top one time, and he'd probably get away with it in one game. So, to me, I know what you mean. In terms of like recent trends, you would make him be a tank or bruiser or something and then play through the other lanes. But I think if he wants to, and crucially for me, even though I'm actually friends with Soaz, I haven't talked to him this off-season about this because I try not to like taint my opinion in certain ways. Certain things I want to just hear about during the split when I can use it. There's no point doing it now. So what I would say for Soaz is it will depend on his mentality. Because if he comes to NA and he's coming because he thinks, right, I want to get paid and plus LCS is shit, I'm going to style on them all, then maybe he's going to be a carry player. If he's really coming, he's like, I want to get paid again and also have a chance to go to Worlds, it's more about, again, my legacy, then he probably, as you say, reverts to what's worked for the last few years.
Also, the other really weird thing is Xmithy landing here. Because a lot of teams wanted Xmithy. So recently it's been revealed. TL also wanted Xmithy. So like TL, TSM, there were just so many people.
Was it already publicly revealed he could have gone to TSM?
Yeah. It was
people don't know is that was actually one. I mean, you referenced it on a past episode where, because of the 3 big junglers that everyone wanted, as soon as one of them would shift, you know, people would like swap. Well, I actually won that one instead. Like, if people don't know, in the off season, it was almost told to a lot of people that was a done deal that Xmithy was going to TSM, and as a result, as far as I know, he and DSM were building around that, like, right, well, if we have Smithy, then we'd get this sort of a player and this one, which is why, as we get to it later, the whole Dardoch thing, like, I don't blame him. That wasn't the first choice. That was the choice at the end when you had to make something make sense and you still needed a bit of a gamble. So I'm surprised by that in myself, because unfortunately, I think that's whack that Smithy went to this team. If he could have played for TSM or Team Liquid, I think it's whack that he went to Immortals because I don't think these teams are as good as those teams could have been with him. I also, maybe he got more money, but listen, you know
how much more though?
Like, I think there's two potentially influencing factors to this. The first one, it could be financial, absolutely, but I think the second one is what he desires in a team, like what he wants his role to be in a team. And I think one way that I could see him wanting to go to Immortals or wanting to go to a different team like that and build something up as from scratch kind of would be if he wanted to be the leader of a team again. Right. You know, in Immortals, in CLG, like he was kind of like a very big experienced mentor and kind of team leader in that sense. And I could see a world where being in Team Liquid for so long, you might want to branch out and kind of be a leader on another team and kind of build something up and prove your legacy on that front as well. So
those are legit reasons, but I hope we can all acknowledge that one reason he definitely didn't go as the top of his list was because he wanted to go back to Immortals and he remembers the great times and the team, and it's really cool. That is the most stupid, the most fucking paper thin narrative I've ever seen, because guess what? None of the fucking ownership group's Immortals, none of the players are Immortals, only the name's Immortals. Like, you know what, Smithy, if you miss the name Immortals, get that old jersey out, just fucking put it on, do a cosplay or something. Like, you don't have to play for the team here. So that angle was whack. Like, I know that's how the team obviously wanted to present it, but like, that's not true. Come on.
Yeah.
That's some bullshit. And Immortals, the team wasn't around long enough in terms of real success that it doesn't have the same legacy. Like, here's the thing, that angle would have been a clever angle to play if he'd gone back to CLG. That's where you maybe do that angle. Like, it doesn't really work. That's a bit of a whack angle for a ball. So they pushed. That was a reach. Put it that way. That was a reach.
It's just so weird. He could have been on TL. He could have been on TSM.
And anyway, that's the reason.
He chose to be here.
The reason it's whack to me is this: to me it feels like it's. I mean, I'll agree with you. It could be the captain angle as well. Essentially agency within the game, but also probably just getting more money. And to me, that's a bit whack because I still think Smithy has LCS championships in him. He can go to Worlds many more times. So I'd rather he was just on one of the best teams. I think he deserves to be on the best team in LCS.
And I would say part of that agency angle is probably he helped pick the roster as well. Like in terms of who he wanted to play with, what styles he wanted to play with.
This is what he wanted?
With the, I at least when it comes to like team styles, right? I think if he was like the first signing, like the first kind of building block, like maybe they built off of that and they had his input. And you know, we can talk about team scouting and how team scout for players later, but just, you know, having him involved in the process, I think that definitely could have been part of that as well and appealed to him as well. So
also the one thing is I'm so glad that he finally hit free agency, because Xmithy, while being the second most winningest player in LCS, probably earned one of his salary or his overall like net worth in the last 4 years or 5 of his careers definitely is not the second highest for being the second highest winning player ever, because he was always on old contracts from CLG and then the one that got shifted to Immortals and then TL had that one, so he was never on a high paying contract, and he so deserves to be on an extremely high paying contract. And he finally is.
I agree.
Even though we're going to get later to the other side of the move, because if you notice, by the way, I know I have never actually talked about it on this show very much, but in CSGO, I actually pioneered this as my approach to all roster moves. What I do is I look at each side of it separately. So I ask, like, is this the right player to remove? Like, was he a problem in the team, etc. And then I only contrast whether the other player was an upgrade, downgrade afterwards, because sometimes obviously you can remove the right player and it's for the wrong reasons. Meteos from 100 Thieves would be a great example of that, right? He's a brilliant player. There's no reason to ever remove him. But there actually were good reasons too. So to me, the reason why actually for Team Liquid, I think this is a big deal that they lost this player. I made the case, I can't remember what episode, maybe 2 episodes ago. I actually think it's terrible in terms of Team Liquid. I actually think Brox lacks many of the qualities I think Smithy had. I thought made him a very good player that fit their team. I mean, he's one of the most perfect fits I think I've seen in the last few years in terms of all the players seem to get along with him. You never hear any complaining about him as a jungler. So the one angle I think is a bit whack is I can only, if I'm Team Liquid, let Smithy go if I'm getting like Meteos. I have to get some other great legendary player who can get back to the top level and be the best jungler. Like, I don't think, again, we'll get to the other part of it, I don't think you can let a player like that go. So again, if maybe they had no choice, but I would have moved heaven and earth for that personally.
All right. I mean, let's shift to TL. Go ahead.
What were you going to say?
Yeah. Oh, I was going to say, I think when we're thinking about roster moves as well, we should think about how Worlds and like how people thought about the ideal way to play at Worlds kind of impacted those roster moves as well. So, lots of focus was put on like the IGs, the G2s, where it's like very obviously they have really good macro sense, but also just like very high mechanically gifted players, where you have the Shy, Rookie, Perks, Caps, Wonder, etc. And maybe TL looked at that and said like, we don't think Xmithy has the mechanical ceiling that can work against these players internationally, because you look at someone like Tien from Fun Plus Phoenix, where his skill shots are amazing and his mechanics are really good, so he can turn a lot of situations on champions like Lee Sin. Maybe they looked at that as the next step of what perfecting their roster looked like. It may be right, it may be wrong, but that might be what they were feeling and what they were looking at when building their roster for next year.
One thing that was really confusing to me about TL is I heard the Broxo to TL rumor while Worlds was going on and while Fnatic was still there, but TL wasn't. Like, I heard it like right after TL got knocked out, and then I was hearing from people that were there. I was like, wow, TL got started on their offseason really early, and Steve probably did the Steve thing where he just lists junglers that he wants, right? I want Tarzan, probably number 1, and then like Broxa number 2, and then he's going to every team and then asking like, is this player going to be up for trading blocks? Like, what would the buyout look like? So,
okay.
Yeah, I mean, very surprised like they started their offseason that early and that it leaked that they wanted Broxa, because that
also implies that Fnatic knew that they were going to have to remove some of the players. Because otherwise, why would you let him talk? Like, you could just say, wait till World's over.
So, one of my friends is saying Steve said in the Travis interview that they weren't looking at Broxa during Worlds, but owners will publicly lie in an interview. Like, of course, you can't say that like publicly, like when that rumor is out there. But that rumor was just so well known that I highly doubt Steve didn't ask. He must have asked.
I would never allege, Loco, that Steve Arnett, one of the owners of Team Liquid, in any way tampered with a player during the off season in an illegal manner without approaching Fnatic. But all I reckon is that Doublelift one day was having a bar, like having a nice cool beer at the bar. He put down his glass, and then in walked Broxer, and he goes, buy you a drink? And he goes, yeah, sure. Buys him a drink, passes him a beer down. He goes, you know what? I'm going to hit the Hiachi. See you later, mate. When Broxer finishes drinking, it's like the Prestige. You just see, it's the little Team Liquid, and then a question mark. Just a little question mark. And then who knows what happened there? Like, I don't even know. I mean, who put that on the bottom of Doublelift's glass? Who will ever know these things?
It's like
was it Perks? Is everyone Perks who coaches? I don't know.
It's like when kids fold notes and it's like, will you go out with me? Y/N, like, please circle, and he handed it over, like that.
What Loco didn't know is the girls just wrote no on all of them.
Offseason this year has been really dirty by the NA team from what I heard. Like, to get around like poaching rules and to get around like not being able to talk to people directly, like they'll follow a player and then unfollow a player and follow a player and unfollow a player, and what it will do is send notifications to your phone if you already follow that person or if you're verified.
That's a clever approach.
So to show interest, and I'm like, wow. Oh man.
Can I just say that like players should be way more responsible about what they like and who they follow and stuff. Like, I swear to God, I've seen so many instances where you very clearly see where a player is going or who they're talking to based on that. I think it's just such a juvenile approach to that.
Here's my favorite ever Invert, and luckily both these players aren't on the team, so I can say this now. My favorite of all time is I've had some straight fire, cold-blooded, like, tweets about Reapered and his choice in the team, and all I'm going to tell you is you wouldn't believe how many times like Svenskeren and Jensen just straight liked them on their main account. Like, are you even thinking this through? Listen, my dude, I like the fact that you're fucking with me on this, but like that is your coach right now.
and at the very least go like full Kevin Durant.
Yeah, give me a break. I was like, everyone can see this, you idiot. What if you just got the activity
dude, you're gonna
open or something?
You're gonna love when we get to C9. I have some things to drop about C9, but yeah, let's finish up on the TL topic.
Might be similar to what I know.
Yeah.
All I'm gonna say is this, Loco, little teaser. We'll tease the fans, shall we? Did your faith get shaken in the mighty Reapered in his decisions at Worlds, son?
I actually have a different angle.
Yeah. Ooh, well, we'll see, shall we? We'll see who knows what. Exactly, right? Anyway, go to the next team.
TL, yeah, let's finish up on the TL topic. I also agree with you. I think this has a potential to be a downgrade. I think they really need to refigure out what their team looks like without Xmithy being a glue piece and there being a lot of high demand players on the team, Jensen, Doublelift, and Jake was so sacrificial, and he met all of those. So yeah, I'm really curious how Brox is going to fit into that, because Jake was forced into really difficult decision making a lot of times. Like, this lane's pushed up, this lane's going to be pushed up. How am I going to handle both of these lanes being in dangerous spots? And he always did a really great job of accounting for both. And Impact was always self-sufficient by himself. Broxa is very much like, here's how you should play the league. He's given a flowchart, and when things go outside of the flowchart, then he struggles, right? And
he also already has so many champions he plays. He's a comfort champion player.
I also will say, like, losing, like I mentioned in the Immortals talk, like losing that communication element where Xmithy was very much a guiding light for the teams he's on, losing that and putting in Broxa, who I don't know Brox's comms necessarily, but maybe that's a downgrade in that regard, because people speak very highly of how Xmithy approaches the game and communicates in game. Losing that and figuring out where they're going to fill in that gap, I think, is going to be a huge growing pain for this new Team Liquid.
Look, I've been well informed by TSM fans who obviously know everything that Doublelift's one of the greatest shot callers the West has ever seen. So I don't see what the problem will be. He'll probably just 1v9 the whole game. Probably be like the original Reaper when he used to play, just play and shot call, just do everything. So probably work out.
Yeah, but it might. For some, like, shot calling can also degrade the quality of your play, because you're so focused on, like, seeing the game as a whole instead of yourself. So it'd be interesting to see if that was the solution, how Doublelift plays.
That was sarcasm, by the way. That was absolutely sarcasm. Maybe
no, I know.
Okay.
I was taking it like genuinely just to kind of keep it going.
All right.
Okay.
Do you want to go to C9?
Fan, right? There you go.
let's go to C9.
Right.
All right.
No, wait a second. I have one question for you.
Okay.
You don't have any issue with the fact that Team Liquid kept all similar players aside from Broxa?
From what I heard, they look for upgrades in mid lane also. That's why Jensen's name came up for some of the.
Because there was a lot of rumors that Jensen was out of there.
Yeah, and like that he wasn't happy that his like spot was kind of like shopped around. But it seems like TL couldn't find a better replacement, and the TL just held on to Jensen's contract.
By the way, one thing I will say, I don't know if Team Liquid was one of these teams, but in line with some of the things you've said in the past about like making crazy offers to Faker, one thing I was told by a number of teams, it didn't end up happening, but people like Kuro, BDD, big name Korean mid laners were on the market and potentially could have come to LCS. So I heard a bunch of teams that were asking me, like, do you think I should get this player? And the problem is, it's like, well, yes, obviously, but you're not going to get him. And it's like, what do you mean? I could pair him with this like EU jungle. It's like, all right, mate, you have fun with that. Like, I'll see you later. I'm pretty sure he's playing in China or Korea, but. So, I mean, sadly, neither of those happened, but
Kuro was on the table for N18 for sure.
Put it this way, that's not as crazy as, like, put it this way, this is going to sound ridiculous, because in terms of talent, I do think that Jensen is a better player than Kuro, but I have to say, if I had a really, really strong team, I would definitely consider a player like Kuro. I think he's a fantastic, like, I think he's like, my joke, he's the Korean Paul Belter. That was the joke, because obviously Paul Belter is Korean.
You really have a lot of like comparisons to.
If you haven't noticed, it is a pretty fucking average region that doesn't have a lot of the best players. I don't know if you noticed that.
What have we got so far? We have ADC Paul Belter,
French Paul Belter,
Korean
Paul Belter.
Yeah. You know, Paul Belter was on the market.
Everyone knows him.
TL, so.
Problem is he's too Paul Belter, so the NA version's always worse.
He's definitely LCS starter caliber for sure. We could talk about that when we go through the rosters. So,
like, because that's the thing, Loco, is to me, like, I personally still think people overreacted to Team Liquid at Worlds. Like, this was yet another tournament where the strengths they had as a team did not fit the meta, and they were still one game from making playoffs.
I agree. I completely agree.
By the way, in the killer group where everyone says Damwon was just wrecking people behind the scenes, IG just single-handedly, double-handedly was just bodying everyone. Like, when you look back on it, I think that's a fairly favourable performance. Like, it was obviously way better than Splice just getting out of that shit group, was it? Like, the top 8 doesn't necessarily make you better in that regard. So my problem is this. I already thought Team Liquid was pretty good and was like on the brink of. I don't think they were going to win the tournament. But I thought there was a world they could have made quarters, and then who knows what matchup they get. Maybe they can possibly.
They're definitely a better best of 5 team than they are a best of 1 team. So my problem
is this: if I'm in the off season and I'm Steve, I'm already spending out of the ass. Let's just do the Lakers or the fucking Dallas Cowboys move. Let's get the one last piece, no matter what it costs us, that gets us to the top. Let's just compete with Carlos. We don't have to like be their bitch. Yeah, the problem is that would probably be like a BDD. That would probably be like a super sick top laner, and I'm sure maybe he made these moves, but unfortunately wasn't able to land them. So I actually think, sadly, that is probably an indictment of LCS. Like, if you've noticed, as much as they can in theory make offers to the really, really big names, they're not really getting them, are they? Like, they're not getting them in their prime. Like, at the moment, they're still not going to get. That's why CoreJJ was such an interesting case, because he did come in theory was in his prime. They're not getting someone like BDD while he's in theory like a prime level player potentially. They're not getting a Chovy. Like, unfortunately, I don't know if that's ever going to happen for LCS. Like, I'd love the idea it does, but I actually feel like it's probably been tried. And if you can't at this money, I don't think you can, unfortunately.
Ready to move on to C9?
Yeah.
All right. So C9 roster, pretty public. Licorice top, Blabber jungle, Niski mid lane, and Zben and Vulcan bot.
Should I start?
Yeah,
I think,
go ahead.
Yeah. So for me, I really actually like this roster a lot. If you think about who they have as kind of a generational core, it's incredibly strong, right? They have Licorice, they have Blabber, they have Vulcan. Those are incredibly young players who can be in the league for a while and potentially all be stars in the league. And then you kind of have carry roles that you can kind of interchangeably put people in, get those superstars potentially that you're talking about, Duncan. I do think this roster, it may not be initially like absolutely mind-blowing, but it's an absolutely stellar roster to have for the next few years, or at the very least an absolutely stellar core to have for the next few years. And as a result, I really like having that core. And we could talk about like mid and 80 carry too, but I do think they're very solid.
It's all being in Cloud9 is not about liking the team. You got to love the team. It's Cloud9. You're supposed to win the LCS. You're supposed to go to Worlds. You're not supposed to just have a cool time and make playoffs. Hey, this guy's good. You know what? Next year, that's his year. Come back 2 years, he's going to be really fucking good. This kid. You're supposed to be getting players now who are good. Like, you're not building. What are you talking about? Like, now here's the thing.
Well, those players are good now, though, too.
They're not as good as Cloud9 level. Like, Blabber is not a top 2 jungler in the league. He's not Svenskeren.
Yeah.
Vulcan is not CoreJJ, and these are the people you're playing against. So my problem is this: that I can't look at Cloud9 like the old days and go Cloud9 TSM Team Liquid, like buy the best players, make the best team, try and win, because there is an underlying narrative. I alluded to it on the last episode. People don't seem to realize, if you look at Cloud9 as an org, they are shedding contracts across their fucking games. CSGO, they have a very cheap squad that's a bunch of gamble players. It's nowhere near a competitor. It's not even top 10, nowhere close actually. In Overwatch, they literally have just sold 2 of the like GOAT players at their position who cannot be replaced, which tells you I'm not trying to win. In fact, the players they've picked up, as far as I can tell, are like gamble Koreans that are cheaper that you can start over with and you hope they get good again. Now in League of Legends, they lose the MVP of the league, Svenskeren. They never replaced Jensen. Niski's a good player, but he wasn't a beast when he was at Worlds by any means. They lost Zazel, who in theory should have been in that whole generational thing, but he isn't. I think Vulcan I think that's kind of a wash. They're both pretty good players. Mm-hmm. Problem is, Vulcan was the expensive one. So my problem is, if you put all those factors together, I think it starts to degrade how good the roster looks.
I love what C9 fans say about this. But Doran, Loco, stop saying C9 is a budget team. They paid 1.5 million for Vulcan. How much do you think they sold the 4 players for? From what I heard, above 2 mil, and I heard around 2.5 mil range. So I'm like, they still made $1 million from the buyouts. Even when paying 1.5 mil for Vulcan, it seems like they made at least $1 million from the buyouts.
And by the way, I'm not dissing them for letting those players go. If you're running it as a business at the moment and you want to survive and still potentially have the chance to come second or third, and who knows what happens, maybe go to World, do it. My problem is this: if you notice, I'm not someone who gives a fuck about money. To me, money is literally only a means to an end. I use money to do the things I want to do in life. So if I have a League of Legends team, I want to win. Therefore, I use my money for that. I don't try to save my money. Like, that's why, to me, it's a bit of a whack angle, because I feel like they did go the budget route. So if I know they go the budget route, it's a pretty good team you've got there, actually. I agree. Problem is, if I had to guess, I'll have to hear the rest of the rosters. This sounds like the 4th best LCS team to me. And that isn't Cloud9 for me, what that represents,
I will say, I think the greatest thing Piglet has done for North America is build up Vulcan and be able to have. No, seriously, like his laning is actually very good. His roam timings are pretty good, and I think
it was a crash course, wasn't it? You had to get good.
Yeah, exactly.
Lane, didn't you?
Exactly. So I honestly I do think that their bot lane stylistically is a little more diverse.
In fact, there you go, Piglet. I've got a job for you, mate. You're my new bot lane coach. All you do is I send the new.
He was
rookies,
their bot lane coach.
I send you the
the end of
rookie
last year.
who's got the potential, right? And you're like fucking Master Pie Mate. You just fucking abuse this motherfucker. But at the end of it, he's either a god or broken completely. And either way, I can deal with that. Broken things, I throw him in the bin. Gods, I bring him into the team. Problem solved.
Yeah, and Licorice is a really good laner too. So I think their side lanes are really, really good laners, and Niski's a pretty good laner for the LCS. So they'll have a really solid early game, and then, you know, we could talk about the coaching staff. I think they have a very large coaching staff, covers kind of a lot of the positions and position coaching, and then people will have a lot of respect for Reaper, myself included. You know, we could talk about, you know, how creative he is, maybe overly so, etc., like all those criticisms, but it's a well-respected coach in North America with a pretty decent North American core that actually lanes very well. You know, all the stuff afterwards, it's a little more difficult to judge.
You can even throw that in as an angle, I guess, if you want to attenuate this to be vaguely more promise. You could say Reaper is someone who has clearly shown a tendency, even by who he subs, to want players he can mold, and that will do what he wants, seemingly. You know, as opposed to someone like a Svenskeren is it's his game to play. He's the one who has the agency in the game in that sense. Hence why he was the MVP. So I could see that angle working as well. Like Reaper might want these players.
Yep. Well, I mean, if you think about it, I wonder how much agency he had in deciding which of the junglers he wanted, right? In terms of who like the staff and management wanted to work with, because I do think there was a breaking point, no pun intended, in terms of like, you know, both of these guys are worthy of starting, so we should make sure that they're both starting, which means unfortunately they had to let one go, right? So
Loco, did you hear any of the, when I was alluding earlier to some of the things about Reaper Worlds, maybe, did you have anything to say on that?
You talk first. Mine's completely different. Mine's on sneaky angle and a little bit on Svenskeren angle. And
okay, all I'll say is this. Basically, when I looked into this, and listen, don't ever, if you're a team owner, you'll never get me. No one's ever exposed one of my sources publicly. Because here's the thing, I'll never come forwards with something and say it came from a source like this if it was one person. I'll just say it as my opinion, I'll make it a speculation. If I say it came from sources, I have like layers deep sources, which means you can't find who it is because it's well known enough, but within the select group. So track me if you will. You'll never catch me. I'm the gingerbread man. So literally, I'm the gingerbread man. When you want to, that's how I fucking do shit, okay? So all I'm going to say is this. I heard that World's whole rotation thing was an absolute shit show and was done for stupid ass reasons. Like, I'm not going to get out anyway, so may as well just fucking give this a guy a go. Now that, I don't care what you think, Loco. This guy could actually fucking save your life and give you one of his kidneys. That is some bullshit. That is fucking disgraceful, mate. Like, that should never be happening at a pro level. Like, you know what? If you want to fuck around like that, get out of Worlds. Give the other team who came fourth in the gauntlet, give them the spot. Let them go and actually try and see if they can actually do something at the tournament. Like, that's whack as fuck. Like, it's one thing. Like, I only overplay the angle that I think Reaper does it all for his ego, just for fun. I actually think he genuinely thinks he's doing the right thing. I just think he imagines himself to be slightly smarter than he is. He thinks he's an anime protagonist. And he doesn't realise anime is terribly written. That's why they're always going, you thought I would checkmate you, but I already did the checkmate before you. And like, that's because it's written by emotionally stunted children who are locked in a room in fucking Japan having to write 17 episodes a day. They haven't got a lot of time to come up with a brilliant Sherlock Holmes-esque
all according to Keikaku.
Exactly. And then, so in that scenario, I actually genuinely think Reaper is trying to do his best for himself and the team. But in that particular situation, like, that's whack as fuck. Because if I'm Svenskeren even, think of any of the players in that team, what have we worked for all year? Like, Worlds is supposed to be the pinnacle. Even if you're the fourth best team, like, say you were clutch in that group, you should still approach it like you're going to win the group. Otherwise, why bother?
As a Reaper supporter and someone that knows him pretty well, I've known him for like 9-8 years now. He loves like keeping things close to his chest and not explaining things fully. Like whenever
except
like
for fucking Svenskeren apparently and his fucking dreams, you know.
Whenever he makes decisions, he's always like, "Oh, there's a reason. Oh, I'm not gonna tell you." Or like he'll tell you like some whack shit. He's like, "Oh, the moon was in line, so I did this." Like, so he has his reasons, but he's always like never public about them. And even to like close friends and like when we're like out drinking and stuff, like he'll be honest regarding like certain parts. So I did this because of this. For this one, like I have a reason. So yeah, he's just someone that likes keeping a mystery about himself. So I have no idea why they made those substitutions, and I was on the party that Svenskeren should have played all 6 games. So yeah, I'm still confused.
I'll just say this. If you want a little track on how things are going to be, because I keep things nice and predictable with my formula, I mix it up a little bit, but generally you can see where I'm going with the players I like, the ones I don't. It goes like this always. If I don't understand what you're doing, I'm not one of these people who goes, well, this guy seems to have a doctorate. He must know everything more than me. No, things have to make sense to me, otherwise they don't make sense. So if you're someone like Reaper, where all your moves don't make sense to me, I'm going to assume that there's problems with it. So the only way you can beat me is you've got to win. You've got to win the LCS, you've got to succeed. So I'd say generally he's done a pretty good job. Like in terms of the rosters he's had, I think he's about where he should be. But I'll always have to criticize you, Reapers, unless you win, mate. So this isn't a good look. Like that was a fucking clown show at the World's there. So you didn't help yourself out in that case at all. So to be fair, I will say if you can get this team to a final, then now I'll have to seriously reconsider that. He knows certain things about the paradigm in League of Legends I don't understand. I don't see this as a team that has any chance to win LCS personally.
I definitely think if he gets the most out of them and can mold them correctly, like this team can make finals, and I think they can be pretty strong too. So
I don't think there's a single player in this team who could be the best at their role.
Oof. I think Licorice potentially. That's the only player that.
Yeah.
Mate, Licorice is literally living off that World's performance in 2018. Like, there was a whole year this year. There was 2 whole splits, and he was going in at times against teams where, on paper, he always came in as like, he's like the guy where when NBA makes the game each year, like he got like a 90, but the problem is actually he's only like 70 this season. And so when your friends playing him, you're like, it's fucking bullshit. Like, why does that guy like get the shit? Like he's garbage now, except in the actual game, that doesn't work. Like that's only that it works in my analogy. So I think Licorice has been mad overrated, mate. For me, he was just an above average top. That was it.
I think his game sense is really good, and he moves to the objective at the correct times.
Flank
like a lot of
well.
players, a lot of players, like especially top laners, they'll try to group for the objective. We talked about like NA rim and
as
stuff.
late as possible.
They'll just So he actually moves at like a correct time, doesn't kind of overstay on the side lane, and it's actually really difficult for a less experienced player to play against that. I think Impact is really good at this too. I think those two are pretty stellar at it compared to the rest of the NALCS, and I think just understanding that movement and like that his own map movement based on his role makes him actually a pretty strong top laner overall. So
oh, by the way, we didn't even talk about the Sven move. So the Sven move, that one makes perfect sense. I understand it entirely. What happened was Jack goes, sneaky guy's gone a bit weird, hasn't he? Like, no one knows where his games are. Like he's making sort of like vague, veiled comments publicly. I wish we had the old Sneaky from 2017. And then someone goes, well, good news. Do you want a Danish Sneaky from 2017? He goes, is he available? He goes, yeah, Sven. He goes, right, there we go. That one made sense. Dude, easy.
I think Sven will have a new renaissance in North America with C9. I think Vulcan's
what's the reason for that then? I
think Vulcan's a really good support, and I also think Zeben got really humble for the last 2 years. Like,
how many times is this guy going to get humbled? What? Is he like you? Does he have to get humbled like 17 times in a row? And at the end he goes like, maybe I should stop fucking damn bitches. Like, what are you talking about? Like, what's changed in his beating that he took this split? Because as far as we can tell, he was part of the thing that tore TSM apart. And then you're like, well, if he had different people who he hadn't torn apart yet, I think he'd be brilliant this time. Like, you have the weirdest reasons for like fucking the upside.
From what I heard, at the TSM run, he took responsibility for a lot of the things that happened within the team. He talked about like how everyone worked hard, and like he himself worked hard and he couldn't deliver. Like, this loss is on me. Like, you guys don't deserve this. Like, I'm so sorry for this shitty year, and I'm so sorry for my behavior.
You guys don't deserve this. I'm gonna go and inflict this on Cloud9 now. Listen, boys, one way or another, TSM must win. We will rise.
I heard he didn't get the best offers from EU. He didn't get the absolute top tier offers.
Who could imagine?
So he wanted to go back to EU, couldn't get the top tier offers. Here's an attractive offer. Cloud9, they're always competitive in finals. So many.
Oh, for him, it's a perfect offer. Like, it's the best offer I'm sure he got. I get his end of the deal.
Yeah, so I think he'll have a new renaissance. I think last 2 years has been a really good spanking for him.
one of the things I really like about Sven as a player is he's similar to Santorin in his work ethic outside of scrims. So he takes solo queue super seriously, tries to imbue that in all of his games, and try to like raise the quality of NA solo queue single-handedly. Obviously, there's some frustrations that come along with it, but he's always like duoing with the support that he's playing with. He's always grinding out games and making sure that he's studying the game as well, because there's obviously multiple ways to learn the game. It's not just about playing. You can also like do VOD review and take notes and stuff like that. And I think that kind of work ethic and having a leadership kind of leadership opportunity built up with that work ethic can be really good for Cloud9 and really good for those rookies or like young players rather that we talked about previously.
Here's my one concern. My one fear is this: if this was 2018, I would be open to giving it a gamble. Like, you know what? Maybe Mithy was just bad. Like, he obviously played very weird in TSM. Maybe if you separate Sven out and Mithy, he played a long time, probably respected, looked up to. If you take him away and you put someone new in, maybe it starts over. The problem is we did that already. We gave him, in theory, one of the best supports NA has had for the last few years in Smoothie. And by the way, I didn't look at that team and think it was Smoothie doing the fucking up. Like, I actually thought Smoothie was one of the better elements of the team. And if anything, I thought they just like neutralized some of his strengths and didn't even let him do half the shit he wanted to do. So to me, at this point in time, I'm scared for Vulcan. Because think about it, right? He had Mithy in 2017. Is it 2017? Yeah, that's right. He had Smoothie in 2018. Now he's getting Vulcan. I'm scared that Sven is that character from Heroes called the Haitian. And his power was that when he was around superheroes, they didn't have any powers. That's what I'm worried about. When he gets into a bot lane,
he neutralizes their power.
Exactly. They don't have power anymore. They're just okay at that point in time. And then they're just like, I don't understand. I used to be able to fly in bullets. Oh my God. And then he's just like, well, time for me to get my Danish ass out of here and into this bush. and then he does his famous exit stage left, doesn't he? Or stage right in that particular case.
Okay, so
the point anyway.
The most
I want you guys to predict. Stop pussyfooting around. Like I think every roster is good, and I believe things.
No, I did. I said Upside was finals. I was very clear.
Are they top two?
I say Upside is finals. They're probably in my eyes a semi-final team.
I think they'll be third. I have a different team at second and TL at one.
I wonder who that kid for. Here's the thing. I'm predictable in an entertaining way. You're just like boringly predictable. So, alright, should we just skip straight to that?
Wait, no. There's a sixth member of Cloud9 that's been very, very interesting in the offseason. We all know who I'm talking about, Sneaky. So Sneaky's offseason has actually been really, really interesting. And what's been more interesting is if you are subscribed to the Cloud9 subreddit, there's been a lot of drama. So I'm not going to mention the person, but someone close to Sneaky on their private Discord, well, it's not even that private, all you have to do is subscribe and you have access to that Discord, have said that Sneaky isn't getting the best deals because the buyout for him is too high. And Jack has actually came out on C9 subreddit and said that's not true, and this person close to Sneaky should not be saying these things and making life more difficult for Sneaky. And then another person close to Spence Garen came out on the Discord also and said, people getting played on C9. So there's been a lot of uproar from C9 fans and personal fans of those players.
Was that some sort of vaudeville actor that's a mate of his or something? Keep talking. Yeah, go on then. Keep going.
Yeah, so...
Sorry for people with...
I mean, it's in line with what we said before, right? Mm-hmm. Obviously, in this scenario, Jack's like trying to... Here's the thing. I hesitate to say the word make money because really when you're losing loads of money, you're just losing less money. Like, make money is a ridiculous concept there. But as I said, I just think at the moment it's the organizational pivot. Because unfortunately, here's the sad thing. This is why I stress that it's my philosophy that you go for the win, and that's the only reason to do it. Like, to me, I'd go into a different business. I'd do business elsewhere. Like, the problem I have is I totally get it from an actual macro perspective. Like, at the position Esports is at right now, teams like C9 and TSM, T9 especially because they're in way more games at a high level, actually have the ability to keep their foot in the door while not spending the amount that the other teams are, and as a result don't have to give away way more equity. Because one of the problems a lot of these teams are going to have is before they run out of money, they're going to run out of equity. I tell you what's going to suck, mate, if Esports gets massive in 5 years and you own fucking 2% of your company and you're really just operating it as the face. That's the nightmare scenario. No one wants that. You only want that to happen if esports fails and you sold it. That's when you made it, right? So the problem is some of these teams that did this, they have to walk a real tightrope. Like that's one of the reasons, by the way, behind the scenes for all the victory they have. A lot of people in the industry are very skeptical of Team Liquid. They think actually they're going way too fast in that sense, and that it's like Blade Runner, the flame that burns twice as bright burns half as long. That's the fear a lot of people have, and so the logic is they're probably even building that into their strategy, right? Well, we have to win more to make it that's the marketing that we get the even bigger deals, and they're going the other route. Sounds to me like Cloud9's trying to do the route of like just go the slow route and just survive, basically. They're just trying to survive for the winter. So I don't blame them. From a business side, it makes perfect sense. I just think it sucks for the team angle. So in terms of the sneaky part, is the implication that Cloud9 somehow fucking him over because they want to keep him as a streamer because he's a big name?
The implication is they're charging way too high for the buyout, so that other teams aren't being as interested and sneaky as they should be. And well, my problem with all this is...
And is the implication, though, that the reason they want to keep him is for the streaming angle? Because I'm not getting here, Loco, is this. That actually doesn't make sense from a competitive angle. Like, if you have a high buyout, you actually want to sell Sneaky for as much as you can. So if you buy out to $1 million and they offer you 800k and you're not going to start him anywhere, you sell him for 800k. Like, it only makes sense if you want to trap him somewhere. So I don't get that angle. Why do you want to trap him?
I have no idea why they would want to trap him either. And the only angle I could come up with... I don't know what's
sinister about it then. That's the part
the only angle I could come up with is to keep him as a streamer. That's like literally the only angle.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, it's the only part that makes sense. Do you have any take on this?
I was going to say, I wonder, there could be the buyout element too, but I wonder how much of it is his own asking price, right? So if he's kind of getting bought out and then his contract is, a little too heavy for certain teams with different operating budgets, like, we can talk about like every team having a certain amount of money, and maybe his price was just too high with the buyout and with his contract details.
I think it's even implied with his behavior. Like every time someone's criticized him, he just comes out and says it's wrong. They don't know the game. Like I'm better than them. I think people are dissing me. They're all like, I'm sorry. By the definition of the group consensus, Sneaky is delusional. He still thinks he's really good, and there's just a million excuses as to why he's not the best player.
Do you think he should be starting in the LCS though? I think
No.
You don't think so at all?
No. To me, he's a player that's going downhill. It's a waste of time. Like, I don't even think, though, like, here's the thing. Again, I'm not going for a streaming empire. So I agree on the streaming side. He's massive. I think as a player, I've only seen him get worse the last few years. And by the way, the angle that I think is whack in Sneaky's career is, when everyone goes, remember that year Sneaky was super sick when he had Smoothie and everyone said he was the best support in the region? Why do you guys do this? Why do you pretend like bot lane's one player? Like, you don't let me do that with mid lane. You have to go to jungle and to mid lane. But then literally an explicitly two-man lane, you act as though one guy did it himself. Like, it's fucking bullshit. So it's the reason why I used to tell people back in the day, I thought Niels was fucking overrated. He had Mithy when he was the absolute best brain fucking support in the West. So to me, I don't think the problem... I would only sign Sneaky for the marketing aspect. Like, I'd rather take a chance on even a rookie. Just give them a go or something. Like to me, if he plays, he'll be like the 9th best AD carry. And nobody in the LCS in the modern day with the amount of money being spent should be playing for 9th place.
So I actually think he'll be like 4th or 5th best AD carry, but I agree with you regarding the declining thing. I think right now, if you have to list 10 best AD carries in North America...
To be fair, I'm not sure who all the AD carries are. I'm just talking thinking of past splits,
Sneaky would definitely be up there. If you talk about top 5 AD carries, I still think Sneaky should be up there, but I agree with you regarding the declining part. I don't see him getting better, and that's the problem with like the long term a bit, right? Like you're gonna sign someone that's gonna be very expensive to be like the 5th or the 4th best AD carry in LCS, and there's like the financial issue of it, and there's also an opportunity cost of signing a rookie or signing a younger player and growing with him. Where Sneaky, the end is near.
I think.
By the way, tie this into before as well. Another problem with someone like Sneaky is because Cloud9 hasn't been spending mega bucks on some of the players, and he was obviously on a contract for a few years back. I imagine he wants to get paid. I don't blame him, by the way. That's the reason why I think Sven should have taken the Cloud9 offer, because for Sven it makes the most sense. If you're Sneaky and you can get a big payday at the end, do it. The problem is, like, that's just a difference between your goals and where you are and where the rest of the industry is, unfortunately, because the industry judges you now.
Yeah, I think Sneaky is in this interesting set of players too, where I think he's still pretty young overall. Like, if
how
we
old
think
is he?
about
Like
just
26 or something? How old is he?
24, 25ish, I would imagine.
Oh, that's actually younger than I realized.
Yeah.
So was he actually like 17 when he came in LCS?
Yeah, he was 18.
18.
Okay.
So and then you think about players like Santorin, players like Pobelter. These are like pretty young people. Like Santorin just turned like 22. Pobelter's like 23. So people kind of confuse being a veteran with just being washed
Old,
up and
yeah.
kind of being old. Whereas like these people are still young and still have the opportunity to grow. Maybe Sneaky can't grow more in Reaper's system, but maybe a change in environment allows Sneaky to kind of blossom a bit more, become a more diverse player, probably build on his strengths a little bit more, neutralize those weaknesses a little bit more. Like, you know, even though he's a veteran, he can still kind of, you know, you can teach an old dog, quote unquote, new tricks in this scenario because the dog's not that old, right? Like, you actually have the opportunity to take a player who you know is already at that fourth, fifth place level, like if you think that way, like Loco does, or maybe he's ninth if you think the way you do, Duncan, but build him up beyond that, and then also have like the great marketing and kind of brand potential that he has.
What's great is your analogy literally gave me the counter analogy, which is you made a mistake saying dog years, my friend, because famously dog years are more than human years, aren't they? Well, in esports, you don't have a team for 10 years like you do in the NBA. You don't have a player who plays 25 years. Esports years are worth 3 or 4 sports years to me. Like, to me, if you play 3 years, you're a vet already. Like, if you played 5 years, holy fuck, you're a legend. Like, you play 5 years in the NBA, you haven't even started your prime yet. So to me, Sneaky is absolutely an old dog that is long in the tooth. And at this point in time, the kids are crying when his fucking hip aches a bit and he looks like he's in pain, wincing when he walks. So I know grandma doesn't know that, but it might be time to take him behind the woodshed and just say goodbye. And then, oh, he's back again, kids. He's young now. Oh, hey, Sneaky's back. Yeah, we've got Sven. It's the Danish Sneaky. Feed him some pulsate. There you go. Look, hey, Sneaky's back. Who gives it? Yeah, Sneaky's back. Like here's what we'll do. At the end of the episode, we'll put both of you in your bullshit theory craft. You must be close personal friends with Sneaky. At the end of the episode, what we're going to do is this. We're going to put a pin in that topic. We're going to come back once we know all the rosters, and you're going to tell me who Sneaky should have been signed to, because otherwise, why are we spinning our fucking wheels?
We can do the same with like Poe Belter.
Yeah, exactly. Let's do a few theory crafts at the end.
I do want to touch on one thing that Invert said regarding Sneaky and like him being a veteran and him getting better. So the problem with League of Legends is the game changes every year. So the thing you learned last year, well, some of it is going to be relevant, some of it is going to be irrelevant, and you have to learn something new. And that's the problem with veteran. And also like kind of Sneaky's mindset and how he's been to criticism. He's like, no, I'm good. No, I'm making these sacrifices for the team. Like, why are you guys criticizing me? Why are you guys saying I should be playing in Academy? To be good at League of Legends, there's times where you have to be like, oh, I actually don't know. And I have to kind of like forget the things I knew and be really humble about relearning
just being
new
adaptable.
Content. Yeah, and be adaptable. The mindset that Sneaky has shown publicly doesn't really speak to that, so that's where I'm worried about like him getting better and like him learning new things, right? He was very defensive towards the criticism, so maybe that's just externally, and internally when Reaper
also mate, here's another reason that if you're Sneaky you could market yourself. I'm a vet, and you know what, I'm not even a selfish vet. I've sacrificed a lot. Whining doesn't help that, mate. That's not an angle that's an owner wants to pick up. Like, if I want a vet, I want a guy who's a cool guy, who's laid back, who's going to give the other people space to shine, not wait until someone goes, what, on Hotline League, that show with 800 viewers, one person said I'm bad, here's why all my team let me down and I have to play a shit matchup. Like, yeah, thanks, I'll definitely be signing you as my fucking core veteran to teach all the kids how to complete. Right, brilliant, yeah, great. Like that's actually a terrible angle again. These people... One of the things you should do in esports, I'll tell you a very, very short story that illustrates a flaw in the modern day. Right? When I did an interview with Richard a few years back, I asked him something along the lines of like, obviously the interesting thing about Richard Lewis, you won't even know this, but he used to have an alias. It's not relevant what it is, so I won't mention it. He used to have an alias back in CS Source, and he got rid of it because he aspired to be a true journalist. So he thought, well, true journalist has his name on the byline, Richard A. Lewis. He actually calls himself Richard Lewis now, but he used to say Richard A. Lewis. And what I said to him on an interview, I tried to be a bit clever and meta. I said, well, even though you call yourself Richard A. Lewis in the interview or on the article, you know, there's still a public version of Richard Lewis, and then there's the person Richard Lewis. So how do you separate the persona? And at the time, he actually said what he even has now sort of recanted, which is, that's the whole point, Thorin. I thought it was kind of childish to have a persona and, you know, have an alias and act a certain way. I'm just me. Like, this is who I am. Now, if you know Richard, half of his problem is the persona that people perceive as him sometimes is not who he is. And that's actually, I think, where a lot of the confusion and frustration arises. So over the years, he's learned the problem with that approach is it makes you think, well, I don't have to do anything about my public appearance and marketing. I'm who I am. People will accept me. You always have to be careful how you are perceived in life anyway. And in business, you need that rep. It's your brand. You need
and
that brand.
journalism too, especially.
Of course,
too,
yeah.
right?
You need the integrity, all those angles. Like, obviously, the things people try to wreck him on are things where they try to make him seem like a bad person, right? So it makes you question his methods or his process or his integrity. So the problem basically is you have to be very cognizant of where your brand is now and where it's heading and how to navigate it. And so the flaw I see for people like Sneaky here, even the poor belter angle, is that what would have been, I would have said, the core tenant strengths of your brand, you kind of went against with what, in my opinion, were very short-term moves, like just complaining about something. Like, that doesn't really do that much.
Your frustration.
Yeah, it's just a bad look, unfortunately, because that's one thing I didn't know that I would sell as an upside to Sneaky. Seems like one of the chillest guys ever. Seems like a guy who doesn't have to be the star. Will take his time in when the meta's not going towards him. Also, so if you then hear, he's like, well, you know, they made me play that way. It's like, you're kind of going against your brand.
One last thing I want to say on it before we move on is if you're a close friend or if you're a close significant other or a parent of a player, don't fucking say shit publicly about, like, negatively about the team. It only damages the relationship between the fans and the player and the team and the player and the owner and the player. If you have something negative that's going on within the player and you can't speak publicly about it and it's a legitimate problem, go talk to Jacob Wolf. Like, go tell a journalist, like, what's going on, and they'll leak it for you, long as, like, you're a legitimate source and you'll be protected. When you speak out publicly about it, it reflects negatively on the player itself.
Actually, I want to ask you about that, Invert. This is one of the most bizarre phenomenons I've ever seen, because I don't, like, what time did you get into esports?
Well, so I was in collegiate at first. I was at the University of Toronto.
What year was this?
That was 2015.
Okay, so still fairly recently. Yeah, right, you might not remember then, but what's interesting is in the original era of esports, when there was no Twitter and there was only websites, the main way that there was a community was IRC, which is just, if people don't know, it's just a text-based chat function. You go in all the chat rooms. Some of them are private, some of them are public. Now, here's the thing. Back then, esports was so small in the industry and had no media attention and scrutiny that you can imagine people were having mad flame wars. The amount of, like, slurs being dropped was ridiculous. Like, if anyone had logs from back then, half the people in Counter-Strike now wouldn't be pro players. Like, it'd be ridiculous. Like, these people are very lucky that, like, the internet has forgotten that somehow. So in this situation, right, it was understood that it was unprofessional as fuck. What I don't get is this. When we went to the phase of Reddit and Twitter, I always used to say the best thing about Reddit, as much as I hate other aspects of it, one of the really great things if you're a team is nobody can make a thread on r/League of Legends, nudes of doublelift, and it'll get to the top. It'll be removed instantly. It'll even be flagged by the users and removed instantly. It'll be downvoted immediately. Actually, barely anyone will see that through Reddit. You'll have to go through a different method. So Twitter, similarly, you could flag things on there. You can mass report things on there. Someone has to have followers, otherwise no one even sees the shit. It's actually hard to leak stuff if you're nobody. What the fuck are all these teams doing? Because it happens in Overwatch all the time, by the way, with these Discords where players have their own Discords with all their little mates and all their fans. And all they do 24/7 is just leak private information in the team, like what the coach said, who did what, who's going to join. Even worse, right? It's one thing if you leak it about the other teams. They do it about their own team. Like, if I was a team owner, I'd be locking this shit down because I see that as, like, a massive liability. Like, if there ever was a real sport that had real media attention, journalists would be in those Discords all the time using people and worming through them.
If that was true too, they'd have way more comprehensive media training as well, just to kind of avoid those situations.
Don't you find that kind of alarming though? Because I feel like we're in a bad space in terms of, like, you know, the leak factor is ridiculous across some of these franchise leagues.
The thing is, like, people view Discord as their private community, and people are like, oh, why are people taking things I say in private and, like, making it public? Like, the only...
It's called clout. It's called clout. It'll always exist. It's called clout.
Yeah.
Loco's like, I'll put 90,000 in clout right now. I'm like, Loco, it's just a concept.
Just do 10.
Mate, here's the thing. I'm not even going to lie. When he was saying that, I really thought about making a Thorin coin. Because I could get Loco in on this. I'm getting on the ground floor when it's $1. What he doesn't know is when he buys $10,000 worth of $1 Thorin coin, well, that's it. That's the end. I don't even continue the coin. I just have $10,000 at that point. I hope I teach him the lesson at that point. You know?
I actually remember there were crypto groups in Korea that I learned about where they would single in on this, like, really dog shit, like, doesn't have any value coin, and they would just they would just
Ponzi
all
scheme,
invest
yeah.
in it. Yeah, they would all invest in it, and then all the people who were
People
part of
see the
group
spike.
that they would buy in, and then those people sell immediately,
Of
and
course,
then they
yeah.
all reap
Makes
the
perfect sense.
rewards. And because like crypto is not regulated in any way, shape, or form, there's nothing illegal about that technically.
No, that's
so
by
it's
the way
just-
the funniest thing to me is when they always try to sell you, like everyone who sells crypto is like fucking Chips giving Loco his take on Ica. All you hear is all the positives and everything just seems better. So one of the things they always tell you about crypto is they're like, the government can't control it. The Federal Reserve has no access. Yeah. So what happens when someone steals like 100K like the double lift? Guess what? Unless the FBI can track that motherfucker, it's gone forever.
Oh, yeah.
How about that exchange recently that just had $100 million stolen from them in crypto? You're never getting that money back ever again. And in fact, you're even going to think, but surely there must be some recourse. No, because that was the point of being in the Wild West. Like, you were taking the upside of that. You didn't want the downside. So anyway, you get the point on that.
All right, let's pick a different team.
Loco, don't invest in Thorn.
Just stay away.
Okay.
Yeah.
Don't worry, I'm trying to still make money back on my Ethereum. All right, Invert, why don't you pick a team?
Let's do Dignitas. I think this one's pretty interesting.
Dignitas. Oh man, this one's good.
By the way, can I just say, I'm actually amazed, especially you, Loco, you've been in the scene a long time. How did most people not know that famous joke where when you Google Dignitas, has always been the case, the first hit has never been the esports team. The first hit is literally a euthanasia clinic. They don't describe it as that. They have a different terminology. It's a euthanasia clinic in Switzerland where people go to pay to be killed. Now, the reason why I thought everyone knew that is because I know Audi didn't name it like that way, but I'll put it this way, the UK scene, we love to talk shit. I don't know if you noticed that. That was something we all used to laugh so much about. It's like, they're paying to commit suicide. Now, obviously, for this lineup, is this a simulation or something? Like, the writers are so shit. Like, you've made it too obvious. That's what they've done with this lineup. They've committed suicide through an investment in ending their team's life. Give us this lineup. Come on, give us this fucking lineup.
So the lineup right now is Huni top, rumor
for like $3 million.
Rumor to be Froggen mid lane, and Johnson AD carry. So for those of you guys that don't know who Johnson is the junior AD carry for TSM. TSM had this junior team for people that were below 17.
Wait, this is like below academy level.
Yeah, is he 17? Is that how old he is?
So they had a junior team. So for people that were below a certain age, excuse me if I said the wrong age. It might have been below 18 or below 17.
I swear for like their Fortnite juniors, those kids are like 10 to 13 or whatever. But I think it's just like named juniors.
Oh, okay. So Johnson's 20.
Okay,
Johnson's 20.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure he's older than 17.
So Chad's correcting me, but it is junior in the sense it's below academy. They had an academy team, and then they had players beyond that they were developing.
Like trainees.
And because it's like a Whopper Junior. Because you hear it, your brain goes a Whopper, and then you go, Junior. Nah, it's not as good, is it? So when you hear TSM, Junior.
So anyways, so it's Johnson for AD carry. They actually announced that. So I'll talk about like the big public rumors. Huni's contract is 2.3 mil for 2 years.
Guaranteed. Right?
Guaranteed. So
that's what the sources say.
So his first year of contract must be like something like 1.1.
Who's the ADC on this team again?
Johnson. You mean before?
Who's the support then?
No support. No one signed.
Oh right, I thought you had an M5. Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
So his contract is about 1.1 in the first year, I imagine, and that's about 1/3 of Dignitas's budget. And they're having a hard time signing other players because people don't want to, take a pay cut to be in a North American team.
And I doubt Froggen was super cheap.
Yeah. So Froggen one, what is it? It's a Travis rumor, and I actually got to hang out with Froggen last Sunday, and then I asked him about Dignitas, and then he gave me a wink, and he said he couldn't say anything. So I think that one's pretty likely.
Okay. My big.
By the way, Loco will tell anecdotes like that are redundant entirely.
Okay.
Like that was just an anecdote telling you he met Froggen. That was it. Like you thought he was meeting Froggen. Oh, what did he find out? Nothing. Like just he met Froggen. Like, so we know that. Go on then.
And he outed his source. Come on.
I know,
it's not a source. It's not a source. How is it a source?
I know.
It's already a rumor. It's oh my god. You guys can tell me things. I will protect your identity.
My biggest question mark is you have Huni and you have Froggen. I'm pretty sure Froggen's not a resident until next year. So
makes sense.
They need a domestic jungle and support for this year, and that I'm pretty sure has dried up significantly.
No. You've got it all wrong. I'll read Reddit. Like, I get informed from the people who know what's going on, and Reddit tells me they will be huge fans of any team who sign NA talent. They don't want they don't like Cordier, Jane, Jensen, and Bjergs. They want NA talent. So whoever they sign, or total unknowns, they're going to be big fans. They're going to have a huge fan base in Invert.
Yeah.
I trust Reddit. They wouldn't lie on the internet, surely.
So I wonder who is even an
There's no one,
right?
There's no one,
right? So
no
so I thought about it. I did a little brainstorming before coming on, and I was like, okay, let's look at domestic jungle talent, domestic support talent that could be LCS ready. And I thought to myself, okay, jungle, you have, and I'm kind of ordering it based on, you know, potential and like who I think would be good. You have Onda, Greg,
Mike Young,
Spica, and Moon, and those are, in my opinion, the like 4 options, right?
I think Onda would be amazing. I actually rate Onda pretty highly.
I do too. I think Onda's. I worked with him in Academy 2018 summer, before the Meteos trade happened, and then I worked with Meteos afterwards.
You have to understand, Loco's one of the people who actually thinks like that was a legit good move in the server.
What?
Like, he thinks that's in the server than Meteos 400 Thieves. That's who Loco is. I hope everyone just knows this. So anyway, keep going.
So that's on the jungle side, and you know that's. You know, it's slim pickings. Obviously, it's no X-Smithy.
Oh, slim pickings,
right?
Is that the support player? Oh, no, sorry, I thought you were
and then, yeah, well, support's even worse, right? I think it's like Diamond, who I believe, you know, Jack.
Diamond procs. Oh my god, he rolls up to the support. This could be sick. Like,
yeah.
No, it's just a random guy I've never heard of, right?
And then who performed pretty well on C9 Academy, and I wonder if Jack doesn't want to let him go because the buyout would be too little, or anything like that. I don't know. That's just, maybe they didn't even inquire about him. And then JJ, who was on FlyQuest previously, and then
you're missing the 2 front runners, Aframu and Matt. Those are the names I heard for Dignitas support.
Those would be interesting, especially because Johnson's a rookie, so they probably want someone who is experienced and could steer him to be a little better. But yeah, those 2 would be pretty interesting.
From what I know, those are the 2 people they were in talks with. I'm not sure if they confirmed for any of them, but I heard Aframu and that.
I mean, the Aframu angle's a fun one. Like, if you put together Huni, Frog, and Aframu, that's not a bad starting place. Listen, it's going to be shit in terms of ADC and sport, like jungle rather. That goes without saying. My biggest problem with this team, right? For the 1 millionth time, I will now repeat something that the 10 people who listen to what I say will go, why is he repeating this again? And all the rest of you will be like, that doesn't seem to vibe with what I know about Thorn, because you don't know anything about me. Anyone who thinks that I am a huge fan of Dignitas because Froggen plays for them has not been following any of my arguments for Froggen, or why I like him as a player, or how I contrast him with the other teams. If I thought the teams he was on was good, how could I justify him being really good on all these shit teams, you idiots? Like, obviously, I hate the teams Froggen plays for, including CLGEU. I think CLGEU was a busted-up team that was just makeshift and had massive egos at the end. I thought they were all super sick players. And I fucking loved it when the 3 shitters went to NA and did absolutely nothing in one of the weakest NA fields of all time while getting paid. My favourite game ever was that one where Sneaky, I remember if it was against Curse or Dignitas. There was a game where he like failed to get his own buffs, had to like go back to the base, and I think got quadruple buffed by the other guy. Like that was like when this guy was getting paid mega bucks. So I was loving that. So all I'll say is this: luckily, it's the devil I know, because you know what I do know all about is that Froggen can play with an almost non-existent jungler, a bot lane that'll probably let him down, and a top laner that's really good on 3 champions and only goes forwards. Yeah, I believe actually that's kind of what Froggen knows what to deal with. That's the world he lives in. He was born in that world. He didn't see a real jungler until he kept... Well, he never actually ever saw a real jungler. I guess he had Shook for like 15 games or something, but... I actually think basically this team won't be good. Look, why would it be? Maybe if Aframu comes, there's a miracle chance he resurrects his career and does something and brings the veteran element. If it's not Aframu, this sounds like a team which will probably be borderline playoffs, and that's probably with Huni and Froggen hard carrying.
Dude, I think there's going to be a big playstyle clash with Huni and Froggen. Like, Huni and Froggen definitely have their own games that they like playing, and they want the entire team to kind of revolve around the style they like playing. I think it's had huge clashes with each other, so I'm very curious to see how it's going to go.
I also wonder, because one of the strengths of Huni last split was that teams had a really hard time playing against Huni and Demonte in draft. So like they would flex a lot of picks and they would move a lot of picks between each other. And when I look at the Venn diagram of Froggen and Huni picks, that middle part is really, really small.
Listen,
right? Like I'm not looking at Vel'Koz's top.
Like,
yeah, like
this guy's a monster.
Top, and then Froggen's Cassio.
Put it this way, it's not ideal that Huni doesn't play champions. Huni
and Nivea
can't play champions that have no escape. Let's go ahead and say that right now.
I wonder how that would affect how Huni plays, because now he's not getting protected in draft as much by virtue of being able to kind of.
There's somewhat
Let's
of
just all acknowledge one thing though, is that bottom of the pecking order is going to be Johnson. Johnson is in no universe the carry player of this team. Like, if he even dreams that, he better wake up and apologize to Huni and Froggen in person. He's not getting any resources. He's probably about to experience like a story I was once told about that Lemon Dogs team that first came into LEC and had like Nuke Dark and Dexter and Zora Zero and all these really good players, right? This is how Dexter and Tabs described like Nuke Duck at the time when he was at his biggest ego, because he was a super sick player. It was the assassin meta where really a mid lane, if it got super powered, took over the whole game, just killed everyone. So basically Nuke Duck was at the level where he would just tell Tabs, right, there's a big wave coming in your lane, so you're going to leave that lane and I'm going to go bottom and I'm going to farm all that lane and you're just going to go into my tower, and then after that I'm going to come back to my tower, don't push the wave, and then I'm going to start farming there again. And then it wasn't, put it this way, it wasn't a negotiation. So, listen, Johnson, buckle up, homie. It's going to be a rough ride. Yeah. You better, it's going to be like classic Forgiven for you, mate. You're just going to be on your own down there. And they're going to, you're going to be a fucking laser pointer, and the other jungler and support are the cats. That's going to be you. But I tell you what, Johnson could make himself look really fucking good if he ends up being half decent in this team.
Yeah, that's true.
One thing that Invert said regarding Huni not getting protected in draft as much, I think there might be a little bit of protection because Huni and Froggen are so specialized. Where if you're at the point where you're like, damn, I have to ban Froggen and Nivea, I have to ban Froggen Vel'Koz, Huni gets protection in that way, where they don't flex picks, but they're drawing bans for each other.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. And then it also by virtue gives bot potential for good matchups or powerful matchups, and jungle too. So,
by the way, of the names you mentioned for jungle, who was it again?
Anda, Greg, Acadia,
Spica.
Maybe, yeah, Spica.
I think
Moon was the last one, right?
Moon said he's not playing pro anymore or something, from what I
heard. Oh, well, that's an issue then, because believe it or not, of those players, like a bunch of those, I consider busts. I don't know why NA keeps recycling them. It just actually shows kind of the shit show that NA is. But you can keep giving fucking Acadian and Mike Young the 50th try if you want. Like, of those names, I think they're all flawed players. So the problem is I'm picking a flawed player if I pick one. But I have to say, just from gut feeling from watching them play, I actually thought the player of all of them that had the most potential was Moon. I actually did think when he first came in the league, like 4 years ago or whatever, I actually thought he was going to be a good player. His problem, as far as I can tell, is he looked like he was a bit of a stage choker or something, and it never transitioned that way. So he's got his own flaw. Like, I don't think there's any ideal pick out of those ones. I think you're already in a tough choice.
I agree with you. I think personally, I would choose Anda as my choice, because Anda isn't or at least when I worked with him, was not a very vocal jungler.
I believe that's what Huni Thieves said, right?
Yeah, and as a result as well, you're working with two very vocal
Huni and Froggen won't shut the fuck up, so perfect.
Yeah. And so, as long as he does his own thing, he's pathing correctly, which Anda is a very good kind of early jungler. Like, he'll know timers really well. He'll path correctly for the most part. As long as he's doing that and he's helping Froggen push out and then using Froggen to help probably Huni's lane instead of Johnson's lane, that I think that can work pretty well. Spica's a little kind of wet behind the ears still, and I don't know how much of a leash he would have for Huni and Froggen's patience. So that's why Anda would.
Two other little things. One, about this team, one thing that I also think is a downside is, like, unfortunately, despite the fact he wants to be a top lane carry player every split, Huni's not actually that sick a fucking split pusher, in my opinion. I don't think he's ever really gotten the hang of it much, because he doesn't understand the concept that you have to back off sometimes. So as a result, like, again, if I'm going to have Froggen and we're going to have just our stars in the solo lanes, at least give me a chance to fucking split push. That way we don't have to win 5v5 team fights all the time. Like, if you have worse players, it's going to be a lot harder to win 5v5 team fights. Like, Froggen teams, he takes loads of money and accepts having shit teammates. Like, you're not setting yourself up well here, mate. Like, if anything, you wanted to be on fucking FlyQuest and have Viper as your fucking top player or something. You might have a chance in that time. So I would just say this. Oh, the other thing was just earlier. I never mentioned this because you sidetracked me, but prediction. At the end of next year, you will all come to the same conclusion I have, that Blabber is mad overrated. He will be like the 5th or 6th best jungler. He will have a bunch of games where he gets some kills early. Some of them we won't even win. And I don't think he will ever do this magical development, because the problem I have is he's not a first split player. I know he hasn't played that many actual LCS games, but he's been practicing with the team the whole time. He's been had a coach with him the whole time. The coach even handpicked him to come into LCS and be a starter at one point in time. Like, when do you think that he gets the magical leprechaun secret as to how to be a super sick brain jungler? Like, that's, some people just don't have certain things. I think it's the same with shot calling. I hate it when people say, I'm going to get a really good shot caller to teach a guy who can't talk. It's like, well, give me a fucking break. Next, why don't you teach a guy in a wheelchair to do a backflip? It wouldn't make any sense, would it? Like, some people just at a certain level, and they are not going to be equipped to do more. So I don't hate on the guy. I think he's certainly an LCS level player. If I was a different team, I mean, to be fair, Cloud9's a budget team now, so I guess it makes sense. I'd give him a shot. He's worth a gamble. But again, I don't think he's going to be one of the top junglers personally. So that's one of the reasons I also, if you take out supportive elements like the jungler, I think it degrades the whole team personally.
Yeah,
So
I think NA jungle is deceptively like pretty tiered out. Like, you have a very clear top 2, maybe top 3, and then it's just kind of, depending on who you're talking to, it's the top 3. I know a lot of teams have certain respect for a jungler who didn't perform that well, and then after that, it's just like, who gives a shit? And I think part of that is coaching too, where a lot of coaches need to have a better understanding of the jungle to teach it correctly. And we're not quite there yet as a region, because Korea and China have pretty insane junglers overall, and they're taught very quickly, and they learn the fundamentals very quickly, and we're just not doing that as of yet. So that's something that personally I worked on a lot in the off season, and it's something that I think we can all work on. So.
And by the way, can we all just fucking calm down for a second? Like, when I said the words "a guy in a wheelchair," you all just fucking, you all thought like this might be the clip.
Hey, like, he could get enough upper body strength to kind of start.
That's not impossible in theory, but I actually don't think that probably isn't physically possible though. In that premise, remember the premise was, I don't ask someone who couldn't do something to do something. That's not even a diss. The guy can't walk. Why is he going to do a backflip?
All right, let's get off the topic. Duncan, do you want to pick another team?
Wait a second. Let me hear. Who's even left?
Well,
TSM.
100 Thieves.
100 Thieves.
EG,
CLG.
and CLG. And that's it.
That's it. There's 4 left.
Mm-hmm.
And GGS as well.
Oh, it's 5. We've only done 5 teams. Fuck it. We better walk through some of these.
Yeah.
Right. Let's do the quick ones first, and we'll do the juicy ones with more time. So what's the, I guess GGS and CLG are probably the quick ones, right? Right. Let's do GGS.
It depends if anyone wants to rant about
No.
in particular.
Like GGS, let's be real. The great thing about GGS is, as much as Loco laughed at the lineup that had Huni and Froggen, that was actually the one time they ever had a chance to do something, mate. And I told you they would do something, and they did. They almost made the semis. They were actually 4th team at one.
Yeah, sorry about
tiebreaker. They did some stuff. They never were going to do more. The restrictions on the team were obvious. The problem is this. This is the old Golden Guardians playbook. This is the team you were going to coach, mate. This is a fucking joke lineup of shit players, or never. It's people who never were, never will be, and I don't ever want to be. And this should be the worst team in the league.
So for viewers that don't know, let's clarify. So it's Haunter top, Closer, a jungle from Turkish league, Golden Glue mid
Not
lane.
even the Korean guy who's washed up, like a different fucking guy.
Yeah, Golden Glue in mid lane, and FBI, Oceanic import that played for their team, played for Academy a little bit.
Played in summer a bit.
And Keith, the former, Keith McBrief, like the Toucan guy that role swapping to support.
Yeah. So I have like a decent rant about this, because obviously a lot of people don't like this roster. I think Closer actually looked pretty good in TCL and on Royal Youth as well. Turkey has brought over Broken Blade, Abadage played in Turkey, went to Schalke. Caps into LCL, and there's a lot of Turkish talent that's actually okay. I think Closer is also pretty good. I really, really do not like this support. I think putting Keith and asking him to role swap to support before considering the other options, or they said they consider them, but I don't know to what degree. I just feel like it's just such a big
But
crutch
did you
and so
know that
wasteful.
Keith got into Challenger in Korea? And
That one
like,
piece.
I can't handle that fucking thing of
But-
people seriously on
But
Reddit.
you know, we talk about like, you know, Diamond, JJ, Afro, Matt. Maybe they don't want to work with Matt again because they worked with him previously and it didn't work out. And you know, that contextually could be a reason why he wasn't considered this time around. But like, there is NA support talent that you can actively work on, that can be coached and that can perform better than they've shown. And they decided that they don't want to take a crack at that, and they want to do an internal move. And I don't think it's lazy, but I do think I would like to see like what the scouting was like for those other supports and what their conclusions were for them, because I don't think having someone start at square one versus someone who's fucking at, you know, Indiana Avenue or whatever in Monopoly, like the red zone or whatever, is it, right? Like, they're choosing to
It's
start
the way you had the fucking gall to use the American streets on Monopoly. Like, how would they know that and like be like the game wasn't literally invented in Britain? But okay, keep going.
You know, the red block, whatever.
Yeah,
like,
I know that.
yeah. So that's the part that frustrates me is you know, you have these people who work so hard in Academy, Keith included, to be honest, in his role, and then when they work so hard and they don't even get a shot in their own role, and the people who were in that role just don't get that shot at all, it can be pretty frustrating as a player overall to see that. And I think I would love to see how GGS did their due diligence on this, but I really did not. I did not approve of the. I did not approve of the support pick at all.
Also, like, you know what? Since Kiwi Kid's gone, we can't just stick with that meme forever. Kiwi Kid is dead. Long live the new Kiwi Kid, Keith McBreath. Because how the fuck is this guy still stealing checks? How does he do it? I don't even believe he's a real player anymore. I don't think anyone will turn up. I think he's become what is called a tulpa Loco, which is an idea form that basically becomes sentient and autonomous and eventually overtakes and takes on its own life and can potentially exit from. There's actually Nepalese monks who invented that particular form. You might want to look into it, mate. So what happened in that scenario is, somehow, you know, some players get memes attached to them. Mm-hmm. There isn't even a player. He's just a meme. I feel like when people just say that meme about the toucan, it's like Candyman. It just summons this motherfucker again, and all of a sudden he's just in a team. Like,
saying
why
Bloody
is this
Mary
player
3 times in the
Why is this player in the LCS? Like, I don't get it. Like, we were referencing earlier players in different positions.
Because they couldn't get Hucko. That was their reasoning. We couldn't get Hucko. We want someone with hands, so we're going to go with Keith. And the weirdest part is, Keith's strength as a player does not line up with what makes a support good. I think support, there's a lot of knowledge, there's a lot of leadership skills that are required, and Keith has none of that. So I'm very shocked that they did this role swap.
I think the other thing too is, like, they needed a domestic support. Like, they have Ole as a support who I think is very strong, but because they went for import jungle, they can't move Ole up with FBI, which I had heard that last year they did in scrims, right? They played FBI and Ole together. I don't know, to do something to make the environment better. I don't know the reasons why, because they still had Froggen, so clearly they couldn't play both at once unless they were moving, like playing Palafox as well. So, you know, that is actually a very theoretically solid bot lane, right? They're both very aggressive players. FBI is incredibly aggressive in lane, and Ole can be very aggressive because he's known for those champions, like hook champions and Rakan and stuff. That's why he can play pretty well. Obviously Tom Kench too, but I think his Tom was out of necessity on that team rather than what his true strengths were in. So yeah, just going with this person over domestic support, and you're starting from scratch, and now most of the coaching and most of the pressure is going to be on this player where he doesn't have that experience and he has to perform immediately, because that's what the LCS is, right? Week in, week out, you have to perform immediately, and there's always going to be that pressure in it. And you know, I think there were better options. That's all. Like,
where is this team out of the 10 for you?
I don't think they make playoffs at all. I think they're probably like 9th, maybe 10th, honestly. And that's no knock on the players. I think the players can be fantastic individually, but as a team, it doesn't click for me at all.
Yo, Duncan.
Loco?
And it's the only
where
team
are
with
they
an NA mid, so that's frustrating too.
Where are they for you, Loco?
They'll be 10th or 9th. I can't think of a team that's worse. Maybe
The
like
the only player I feel sorry for.
Dig.
is Squad.
Actually,
everyone
10th
else,
or 9th because of Dig.
everyone else should have taken these jobs if they got offered them. I just feel bad for Haunter. This guy's way better than a fucking team like this. I feel like you guys did this all last year as well. Not only did you disrespect Froggen, you disrespect the fuck out of Haunter as well. Like, that guy actually legit carried way more games than most other top laners in the league, and had to do way more with way less. Like, I think he had one of the most imp fucking junglers of all time. So, like, I don't know what this guy has to do. This is a guy who's a champion.
Haunter's an incredible laner too. Like, his laning is so good. His weaknesses are all stuff afterwards, like once you get out of lane. But his laning is incredible, and I think he's one of the NA tops that really has a solid understanding of all of his matchups.
Duncan, what about we save the other 14th for a different episode? Because like this episode's gone for like 2 hours 30 minutes, and then there's no way, like we'll either have to go very short.
Let's
about
just
them.
do this. Luckily, we saved some big ones, so let's just do this. We'll do the things we put a pin in before. So basically, which teams? Like, okay, just for now, give us the quick overview of the teams we didn't mention, just so we know who they are.
TSM is Broken Blade, Dardoch, Bjerg, Kabe, Biofrost. EG is Kumo, Svenskeren, Mystery mid laner, who's the AD carry? Bang, Zazel. And then who's the other team we missed? 100 Thieves is Someday, Meteos, Ryoma, Cody-san. Yeah, Cody and Stunt.
Right, okay, so luckily, by the way, those are all teams that are at least going to be competent.
CLG.
CLG.
CLG just upgraded in theory as well.
Ruin, Wiggly, Crown.
It's only one change. It was just Crown instead of
Smoothie.
Smoothie.
Yeah, Stixay
Smoothie and Biofrost swapped. Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Right, so basically, those are all teams that in theory are going to have something to say about the split. So actually, we'll save that for another episode.
Sure.
Right, now that we know all the lineups, pick the team. So first of all, Sneaky, because that's the one I think is the most debatable. Is there a team in the league that you put Sneaky on?
I think Sneaky should have been on Dignitas. I think it should have been Sneaky Afro on Dig. I think that should have been the roster that they
Who was the AD carry of Dig? Johnson. Right, okay.
I think, definitely could be on Dig. I think he could be on Immortals.
GGS maybe?
FlyQuest. I think he could be on FlyQuest. I think he's better than Turtle.
He could be on FlyQuest.
You're fucking downplaying Wild Turtle way too much. Like, one split doesn't end your career, Loco. Like,
It doesn't?
You know what? I bet you this split, Wild Turtle's like the 6th best ADC in the league.
6th best? Okay, we'll see. I'm down to watch.
But I could see arguments for that as well. And I think maybe 100 Thieves. I know Cody performed really well as well, but Sneaky is.
Wait a minute, you would take Sneaky over Cody's son? That guy was one of the best things about Clutch.
I would say that Cody has really good mechanics and he laned pretty well with Vulcan, but he didn't. If he doesn't have a great support, then I don't think he plays as well as he normally should. And we don't know about Stun.
The corpse of Afro on his back, fucking Hodor carrying this guy. So I don't know.
No, Afro was an MVP when he was playing.
Yes, sure he was. Just like Doublelift was never an MVP of the league ever. Yeah, sure. We all know that's real.
All right, so now let's go to the Povelter angle. I think Povelter is definitely going to be better than Ryoma. Definitely better than Golden Glue. And
definitely better than Golden Glue. I don't know. Here's the thing. This is the right team for Golden Glue. Like, this is the sort of team that can do the bullshit angle of like, well, he's a good guy, and look, we're going for NA talent. It's like Golden Glue is who he is. Like, he's not going to do much beyond this. Why would he?
I think he's shown he can be better than Aka as well.
I just don't know Aka enough to say that.
Yeah, and I think he's shown he can be better in certain, like for example on FlyQuest, like showed that he could be better than Froggen and oh goodness,
Dignitas.
Like Ryu at the time and PoE at the time as well. So I do think at the very least he deserves that look from LCS team.
Interesting. I didn't know you actually came from an alternate universe. Oh, fair enough. I never actually saw that ever happen in his entire career. But we're allowed to disagree on things.
The thing about
it's like an Elseworld still kind of cool. Imagine a world where Pobalt was ever better than Froggen. Fucking hell. Are we breathing air in this one? Like, do dogs actually walk us? Are we pets? I don't know. Sounds wild, but that's
no. We're in esports years in this world actually. So,
yes, I see right there. There you go.
Yeah.
So,
the weird thing about Golden Guardians and Golden Glue for me was they made this decision super early on in the off season. Like they made this decision way far back, like about 2 months back, where they interviewed Golden Glue and they liked them, and it seemed like they were pretty set on Golden Glue for a while. I thought like they'd at least explore other options for mid lane, but they're like, Golden Glue, that's our guy.
Well, listen, I think I made it clear before. I think Golden Guardians is one of the most incompetent organizations to ever fucking touch the LCS. Is that clear enough for you? And that includes teams that had to sell because they were literally tearing themselves apart by saying stupid slurs. So it's a pretty high bar to reach, boys. Mm-hmm. Enough said. So, right, what was the other one? There was one other player
Sneaky
as well.
and Pobelter, those are the two we were going to do.
Wasn't there another player as well that we were going to do? Am I missing that? Was there three?
No. I mean, we could talk about Afro, but I think Afro should be, like, I don't know, NA support is just so... Jungle and support is just so rough when it comes to domestic talent. Because
the problem is the angle of like the shot calling angle will always be a way you can get like consideration if you're an Afro, like even if you look bad in the server, you're right.
So
yeah.
The other player that's outside looking in that people are talking a lot about is Demonte.
Right.
Put it this way, Demonte is better than Golden Glue and has a way bigger upside. I don't get that whatsoever. In fact, there's the dumbest thing about the Golden Guardians. Right, if you really want to sell the lie that you're developing any talent, Demonte is the player you get. Like, I don't know he's going to develop much more, but he already looks better than Golden Glue.
I think contextually, if they did make this decision like a couple months ago, they assumed that Demonte would be staying on another roster. So, you know, maybe they're kicking themselves for making the decision that early. You know, it's kind of the
leaders available.
The two extremes, right? Where it's like you make a decision so early and maybe it fucks you up, or maybe it's amazing, and then you're like Misfits where you make a decision super late and then it fucks with your roster a bit too. So.
All right.
Oh, how about this? How about put Demonte on 100 Thieves? You like making all the same mistakes again? Thought that was your guys' thing.
We'll touch on that.
Why is Papa Smithy come in like, I have complete control. I am the artist behind this vision. It's a remix. It's the same song with just a techno. Same exact song with that. What the fuck is this shit? Like this is the most underwhelming.
But it was successful.
This is like Star Wars: The Force Awakens. Like this, I waited 20 years for this. The fuck is this shit? Like
I thought you hated Star Wars. You know, I got yelled at for liking Star Wars and Harry Potter.
I was implying I think they're shit, but never mind. Never mind that. Look, you're gonna love the newest one, Loco. The leaks I've heard are amazing.
I know.
The ending's brilliant, mate. It's right up your alley.
All right, Invert, are you gonna be coaching next split?
I do have a job. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm talking to teams rather. Mm-hmm. I don't have a formal offer yet, but you should expect me to be
Does TSM
part of
have
an
a
LC.
coach yet?
They do. No, they do. Okay.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
right,
well,
yeah, and EG has a head coach.
Because the thing is, you like a lot of shit players, so I was hoping you were going to TSM.
I will say, it's not so much liking shit players as much as I believe that those
that's always
players.
The problem. Yeah.
I believe
belief in humanity will come back to bite you, man. I guarantee you.
Domestic talent to the point where I think if we create better professional development opportunities and we kind of raise the level of coaches, because people don't talk about that when they talk about developing NA talent at all. Like, we don't talk about developing the coaches who are eventually going to be developing. So I do think that we need to kind of get those steps started, and hopefully 2020 we can do that, and hopefully I could be a part of that as well. So
where can people find you?
Twitter is invert_lol. I'm pretty active on Twitter, and was streaming World's VOD reviews for a bit, and then I kind of had to get to work with something else. So, but I'm planning to start that up again just to look at kind of the new signings and see what their strengths and weaknesses are overall. So,
all right, sounds good. Duncan, any final words?
No, why would there be? Next episode, see ya.
All right, later, guys.
See you guys.
Thank you so much to our gold Patreon supporters, ButtPounder420, Tobias Bernasconi, and Icelandic C9 Fan. Without you guys, this wasn't possible, and thank you to all the Twitch subs, people watching on YouTube, anyone that might be supporting the show in any way. Without you guys, the show is never possible. Thank you.